Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Let's bring to order the April MTA Board Meeting. We've got a full complement of distinguished board members in attendance, and we ought to get it going. Let's hear the safety announcement to begin with, please.
Your safety is of the foremost importance to the MTA. Therefore, we ask that you listen and adhere to the following instructions. If you witness an emergency, notify emergency personnel in the room and call 911 immediately. Please follow any audible instructions provided through the public address system or visually on screens in the event of an emergency. If an alarm sounds, wait for a public address announcement and follow instructions. If told to go to another floor or to evacuate the building, leave all unessential items behind and use stairwell A just across the main hallway, or stairwell B down the hallway past the elevators. If you have a mobility disability or cannot self-evacuate, please proceed to stairwell D or E for assistance by MTA staff or emergency personnel. An automated external defibrillator, AED, for use by trained personnel is in the main hallway just past the elevators. If you need assistance during an evacuation, please tell an MTA staff member or emergency personnel. Thank you and have a safe day.
Yes, good morning and welcome to the MTA's board meeting public comment session. We will hear from speakers both remotely and in person. We have 38 members of the public registered to speak today. As a reminder, we ask that all public speakers adhere to the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. I would like to remind our public speakers that in the interest of time and fairness to all speakers, we limit everyone to 2 minutes. Please be aware that there will be a warning beep to remind you that you have 30 seconds to conclude your remarks. Our first speaker is Jessica Murray, followed by Jack Nierenberg.
Good morning. 7 long years ago this month, in 2017, disability advocates sued the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators we depend on. 7 years. That's how long the MTA has dragged out this lawsuit. 7 years. All we want are elevators that don't break down when we're in the middle of a trip. All we want is an effective communication system so we know when an elevator is out. All we want are clean elevators and a legal agreement so we can hold the MTA to its promises. 7 years. But what do we have instead? 7 years of the MTA's private lawyers earning 7 figures. For what? No settlement, no progress. 7 years. The MTA honchos may tell you that they won the case. Don't believe them, they haven't. The MTA is back in court with us next week, along with their high-priced lawyers racking up hours. 7 years. And 2 years since we settled 2 other subway access cases, which we celebrated together. So we know the MTA can make a deal when it wants to, as BART and San Francisco did in a similar case a few days ago, and as Boston did several years ago. 7 years, and often 7 months to replace an elevator, making a station inaccessible. Meanwhile, the MTA will re-signal the entire G line in 6 weeks this summer. 7 years of the MTA telling you they're doing a great job when people in wheelchairs are still getting carried out of stations by the fire department because one of the many elevators on their trip isn't working. 7 years. Nobody wants to hold up a giant 8 next year. Board members, tell the chair and the governor it's time to make a real deal that will guarantee working elevators for generations to come. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Jack Nierenberg, followed by Christopher Greif.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Jack Nierenberg, the Vice President of Passengers United. And I went to one of the open houses for the Queens Bus Network redesign recently. I spoke to some of the lovely people running it. And one of the questions I asked them was, will there be an equity analysis? They said yes. I then asked, what metrics are you going to be using to define equity? That I could not get an answer for, and that I find especially concerning because, if anything, equity should be one of the primary factors that's going into a major initiative like the bus network redesign. It should not be one of the just another supporting factor that comes up in the end, especially if there are no defining metrics. If anything, those metrics should be there from the get-go. Those should be informing those decisions. And I know that there is an equity office at the MTA. Unfortunately, we don't really hear about them, really. And I'm actually very curious to know what exactly the dynamic is between management and this equity office. Because if anything, unfortunately, what we've been finding is that equity has not really appeared to be a major factor going into initiatives like the elimination of the Atlantic ticket and the new city ticket program. Because when we see people who are being disadvantaged disproportionately, that creates even further problems. And I've been studying equity and in public transportation, and I have a path forward, and I invite all of you to, at the very least, speak with us, because we have solutions and we have ways moving forward. Because if anything, from these plans, they should be benefiting New Yorkers, and if they're harming New Yorkers, that becomes problematic. So we have solutions. Please speak with us about them. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Christopher Greif, followed by Mike Howard.
Good morning. I'm Christopher D. Greif. As an advocate for disability, I know today you guys will be voting for the discount. Let's also not forget part of our discounts for seniors and people with disabilities. As you know, and you're traveling in the mornings, heading into the city, it is very difficult. They don't have the reduced fare price. But we do need it during the morning rush, because some of us may have to go to doctors, specialist doctors, going to trainings, or want to go somewhere very early to get on a train, because that train will run maybe from out of Suffolk County into Penn Station, or on the Metro North to Grand Central. It is important to us, not just with disability and seniors, but also our veterans as well. They need to get on the trains during the mornings and not, they should be paying the reduced fare. It makes sense for us to go in the evening when we pay reduced fare going up north on Metro North and going east on the Long Island. We should have that during the morning times as well. And I do want to thank our NYPD and MTA police who are out there protecting us. But let's also aware that summer is around the corner. We need to make sure that officers are out there, not overheating, but we see something, we should say something. And let's also remember advocating for people with disabilities, seniors, and our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Michael Howard, followed by Maddie Bucky's Highland. Over Zoom.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael J. Howard. I prefer Mike at all times. Listen, I just want to let y'all know that I'm glad the Villanova screens inside of the buses are installed, but let me tell you something about the Clever device. The Clever device that's in the buses right now needs to be transferred back to Villanova's, because those Clever devices and the screens, Clever, those things are unclever to me, because they don't hardly navigate when the screen is on, but when the screen is off, they navigate. So they need to be either reprogrammed or transferred to version 2, which is Villanova screens. That's already getting installed on buses I've been advocating for years, almost a decade about it, which should have been installed since they first came out from 2010 all the way to now. To 2018. So let me say something about the subway system. The 4 line, it needs to be very clean, because I've seen the trains that are dirty. It needs to be very clean. on the outside, not just the inside, the outside, and not just only needs to be clean, it needs cameras to be installed.
Please conclude
know?
your remarks.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Maddie Bucky's Highland, followed by John Landers.
Thank you, Danny. Good morning, folks. I'm Matty W. Bucky's Highland. Thank you. As April draws to a close, as Autism Awareness Month comes to an end, we have to on behalf of me and the millions around the world dealing with autism, we want to thank the Metropolitan Transportation Authority for giving us a world and transit where people are accepted and understood for who we are. And then the second thing is, I would suggest after the public safety announcement's made and before public comment, we recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. God bless each and every one of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be John Landers, followed by Jean Ryan.
Good morning. I'm here today to address two people. My president, President Davey, and a gentleman that I worked for several years as his dedicated announcer and tower operator at Canarsie, Demetrius Critchlow. Guys, I'm coming to you. I am the tower operator at Livonia Yard on the midnights 5 days a week. I am in a safety-sensitive title. And when they send us down for random urinalysis testing in Livonia Yard on the midnights, we have to go with an escort. They have in other yards provided a vehicle transporting us to the MAC Center for the testing. Livonia Yard does not have a vehicle, despite the fact that I've gone to my superintendent, my general superintendent, my ACTO, and begged them to get a vehicle so that they can take random urinalysis testing people down on the midnights. I have had no luck whatsoever in convincing them, and I don't know what else to do other than to come to my president and my former boss, Mr. Critchlow, who I have always known to be fair and a decent man. And I am asking you, gentlemen, please put a car in Livonia Yard that is permanent, not that somebody can give it out and lend it to anybody else. Get us a car, please, so that we can safely go down to the MAC at night. All right, instead, now we're walking down Elton Avenue, and we pass by that little playground that has people in it at 3 a.m. They're not studying their math homework. So I'm asking you, please take care of us, protect us, get us to the MAC so we can also get back faster to our work, rather than just take the train and come. I thank you. I'll follow up with you, Mr. Critchlow, in an email, and you, Mr. Davey, as well. Take care.
Thank you for your remarks.
Have a wonderful summer.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Jean Ryan, followed by Lisa Daglian.
Good morning. 7 long years ago this month, in 2017, disability advocates sued the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators we depend on. 7 years. That's how long the MTA has dragged out this lawsuit. 7 years. All we want are elevators that don't break down when we're in the middle of a trip. All we want is an effective communication system so we know when an elevator is out. All we want are clean elevators and a legal agreement so that we can hold the MTA to its promises. 7 years. But what do we have instead? 7 years of the MTA's high-priced private lawyers earning 7 figures. For what? No settlement, no progress. 7 years. The MTA honchos may tell you that they won the case. Don't believe them. They haven't. The MTA is back in court with us next week, along with Paul Weiss racking up hours. Whoops, not Paul Weiss, high-priced lawyers though. 7 years and 2 years since we settled 2 other subway access cases, which we celebrated together. So we know the MTA can make a deal when it wants to. as Bart in San Francisco did a few days ago in a similar case, and Boston did years ago. 7 years, and often 7 months to replace an elevator, making a station inaccessible. Meanwhile, the MTA will resignal the entire G line in 6 weeks. 7 years of the MTA telling you they're doing a great job when people in wheelchairs are still getting carried out of stations by the fire department because one of the many elevators on their trip isn't working. 7 years. Nobody wants to hold up a giant 8 next year. Board members, tell the chair and the governor it's time to make a real deal that will guarantee working elevators for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Lisa Daglian, followed by Tasha Leribors.
Hi, good morning. I'm Lisa Dagley, and I'm the Executive Director of the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA PCAC. Happy birthday, Whitestone Bridge. Happy birthday, Long Island Railroad, Chris Greif. And in 2 months, happy birthday, congestion pricing. June 30th will go down in history as the day we embark on one of the most meaningful steps toward a more sustainable future. We can't wait for the improvements riders and drivers will see. Cleaner air, better transit, and less traffic. We're thrilled to see steps being taken to improve service and affordability before it starts. Using the OBTA to create new 10% discounts on monthly railroad passes within the city and increasing express buses on weekdays, along with other proposals from this year's state budget, including improved bus service and frequency on 20 other routes, will also help get drivers out of their cars and onto transit. Automated camera enforcement will ensure that buses go even faster than chickens, even faster without cars and trucks getting in the way, as will more dedicated bus lanes. We're disappointed the FARES Act, our proposal to expand fares to the LIRR and Metro North within New York City, extend the senior disability Medicare discount to the AM peak, and create the weekly city ticket with transfers to subways and buses didn't make it in this year's budget. But we'll continue to work with you and elected officials at the city and state level to make these common sense proposals a reality. We're also glad to see the MTA's new Climate Resilience Roadmap, a critical vision for protecting our transit infrastructure from extreme weather. PCAC has long called for a forward-looking vision for protecting riders and workers alike from flooding, extreme heat, and everything else the climate crisis throws our way. Coupled with the plan for reducing emissions and improving sustainability, and of course, the funding to make it happen, we're confident that the goals and plans in this roadmap will make meaningful improvements. Thank you. And congratulations, Rob.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Tasha Leribors, followed by Alita Dupree over Zoom.
Hello, good morning. My name is Tasha Leribors. I work for Center for Independence of the Disabled. Good morning. 7 long years ago this month, in 2017, disability advocates sued the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators we depend on. 7 years. That's how long the MTA has dragged out this lawsuit. 7 years. All we want are elevators that don't break down when we're in the middle of a trip. All we want is an effective communication system so we know when an elevator is out. All we want are clean elevators and legal agreement so we can hold the MTA to its promises. 7 years. But what do we have instead? 7 years of the MTA's high-priced lawyers earning 7 figures. For what? No settlement, no progress. 7 years. The MTA honchos may tell you they won the case. Don't believe them. They haven't. The MTA is back in court with us next week, along with their lawyers racking up hours. 7 years. And 2 years since we settled 2 other subway access cases, which we celebrated together. So we know the MTA can make a deal when it wants to, as Bart in San Francisco did, a similar case a few days ago, and Boston did years ago. 7 years. and often 7 months to replace an elevator, making a station inaccessible. Meanwhile, the MTA will re-signal the entire G line in 6 weeks. 7 years of the MTA telling you they are doing a great job when people in wheelchairs are still getting carried out of stations by the fire department because many of the elevators on their trip isn't working. Folks, it's time to
Please
tell
conclude your
the board
remarks.
members.
Thank
got
you for
some
your
work to do.
remarks.
Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Alita Dupree, followed by John Padula.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Jano Lieber and members. Alita Dupree for the record, she and her with Team Folds. Hope you hear me okay. I'm in an NJ Transit bus. Hope we don't lose the signal. So anyway, I try to bring you some positive energy today. How do we build the best subway and bus system and rail that we can? Think about building a renewable energy subway. I think we should buy power in our own name. Schedule it and instead of just letting others do that for us, because I think we have experts in that. And fares, I would like to see a more simpler fare policy, a 24-hour same fare policy for senior and disabled users of the system. But I bring to you, why do I speak at meetings? Well, because I think the things that I have to say are relevant wherever I happen to be. And the subway is not just about getting places, but enjoying the journey. To remember the words of Jerry Rafferty, I listen to Right Down the Line just about every day. That goes back to 1978. So I often feel like I'm a lone wolf in bringing you positive energy. I know I'm not alone for other respectful advocates in my cadre. But I can say this, I've not run across any inoperative elevators in the subway during my 3.5 weeks here. I go all over the system. So it seems to me that you're working pretty hard at this. Well, I hope you'll be okay. And I enjoyed you yesterday. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be John Padula, followed by Jennifer Van Dyke.
Where am I? Where's his mic? To the right? Oh, there we go. Blindness hazards. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is John Padula, and I'm a supervisor with Educational Vision Services from New York City Public Schools. I'm also the chair of the Advisory Committee for Transit Accessibility. Jano, 2 quick things. Equitable on demand is not only sustainable, but it's the right thing to do. Most of the schools I serve are in Staten Island. Every traditional blue and white van that you guys send me for Accessoride costs the agency $120 or more. An on-demand trip would be 2/3 of that price. Paratransit is not only egregious, but it's disrespectful. It's disgusting. It's humiliating. It doesn't allow us the same autonomy or dignity as any other transit rider. It's humiliating as an adult. Second, it's never one size fits all for disability. We need a range of options. We're a diverse group of people that have diverse needs and different lifestyles. I'm glad we're having conversations about phase 3, and I appreciate those conversations. But phase 3 can't just serve a slice of the bell curve. It's got to serve everyone. Everyone matters. Our experiences matter. And you can't just focus on a subset. You have to have a range of options that are meaningful to everyone because, again, disability is not one size fits all. We don't live our lives in a vacuum. In closing, I just want to say congratulations to Rachel and Chris. I've often heard it said that administrators do things right, but it takes good leaders to do the right thing. And I've learned a lot from both of you. And I know it's very hard to do the right thing in a bureaucracy like this, but again, I
Please
appreciate you
conclude your
both, and
remarks.
I've learned a lot from you guys, and good luck to you going forward.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jennifer Van Dyke, followed by Teresa Rodriguez.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Van Dyke. I'm with the Elevator Action Group. 7 long years ago this month, in 2017, disability advocates sued the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators we depend on. 7 years. That's how long the MTA has dragged out this lawsuit. This may sound familiar, but 7 years is worth repeating. 7 years. All we want are elevators that don't break down when we're in the middle of a trip. All we want is an effective communication system so we know when an elevator is out. All we want are clean elevators and a legal agreement so we can hold the MTA to its promises. Yes, you've heard this before, but 7 years is worth repeating. 7 years. What do we want instead? 7 years of the MTA, what do we have instead? 7 years of the MTA's private lawyers earning 7 figures. For what? No settlement, no progress. 7 years. The MTA honchos may tell you that they have won the case. Don't believe them. They haven't. The MTA is back in court with us next week, along with high-priced lawyers racking up hours. 7 years. And 2 years since we settled 2 other subway access cases, which we celebrated together. So we know the MTA can make a deal when it wants to, as BART in San Francisco did in a similar case a few days ago, and Boston did years ago. 7 years, and often 7 months to replace an elevator, making a station inaccessible. Meanwhile, the MTA will re-signal the entire G line in 6 weeks. 7 years of the MTA telling you they're doing a great job when people in wheelchairs are still getting carried out of stations by the fire department because one of the many elevators on their trip isn't working. 7 years. Nobody wants to hold up a giant 8 next year to you board members. Tell the chair and the governor it's time to make a deal that will guarantee working elevators for generations to come. 7 years. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Teresa Rodriguez, followed by Jason Anthony.
My name is Teresa Rodriguez. I'm here on behalf of Reasonable Accommodations for Pregnant Women. I am currently a bus operator out of Fresh Pond Depot. I'm currently 8 months pregnant and 1 week along. I have been out of work now for 2.5 months without pay, which has put me in a really bad situation. I'm asking for transit to please fix what's going on. It's not just with me, it's also my other female coworkers who are currently pregnant. Happens to be quite a few of us. We are all dealing with the same situation. I'm currently in the worst because I am new to transit. I don't have days to put in. My FMLA has already been used up, unfortunately, so after I have my baby, I will have my maternity leave, and after that, I'm basically left to my own devices. My savings have been depleted. I've been struggling to pay my bills, feed myself, and even with my insurance, I still have co-payments, which I'm currently behind on as well, for my doctor's visits. I'm asking that transit, please find something for bus operators to do within or even outside of our depots. Anything will help, aside from putting us out of work without pay. This is the worst thing that could possibly happen to anyone, especially expecting a child, especially if you're a single mother like I am. I ask, please come up with something, find something, some way, somehow. When there's a will, there's a way. You know, we move the city. And when we come back from this, we're going to continue to do that. But I would like to feel appreciated and acknowledged. Please find something to accommodate pregnant women, not just for me, but for my coworkers
Please
from now
conclude your
on in the
remarks.
future. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Jason Anthony, followed by Andy Pollack over Zoom.
Good morning, Jano, Paige, and everyone else. Let's start with a single question. There's an empty seat among you guys. Where is John Samuelson? He is a board member. He is one of your colleagues. He is a member of the transit committee. Where is he? He has been missing for several months. Once again, for the record, and Paige, let's look for a way to get that seat vacant. Once again, the question is, where is John Samuelson? With that, let's say happy birthday to Christopher Greif, whose birthday is today. Luckily, congestion pricing was approved with, let's say, with both of your support, and I thank you guys for getting that approved. And as a reminder, you guys gave me an early birthday gift because my birthday is June 19th, even though that congestion pricing will be implemented on June 30th, except for David Mack. But we know that David Mack won't know for political reasons. But we forgive you, David. We forgive you for voting no. But even though, let's get congestion pricing up and running once and for all. And for my brothers and sisters for the disability community, let's not fight. Let's get together and get things done
Please
once and for
conclude your
all.
remarks. Thank you for your remarks. As a reminder, please adhere to all of the MTA's rules of conduct and decorum. Our next speaker will be Andy Pollack over Zoom, followed by Monique Johnson.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the MTA Board. Andy Pollack, Passengers United. So let's get into a couple of things to begin the second quarter. First things first, congestion pricing was approved, despite my comments being played on WABC TV saying that congestion pricing should have never went through in the first place until the lawsuit was settled with New Jersey. And not only New Jersey, but I need to clarify to WABC that also I meant to say that Staten Island was filing a lawsuit, and so was the UFT. So until all the lawsuits were settled, the MTA should have never voted to approve congestion pricing. And now it's going to be enacted on June 30th. So let's see how the summer's going to end up with millions of people expected to ride the subways beginning this summer. Next point I want to briefly make. Yesterday I was at Penn Station, and I want to know, why are all the video boards not displaying the departures? Because we were crowding around one display screen yesterday on the 7th Avenue concourse. So please get those signs turned back on immediately, because we need more standing room at Penn Station. And the third thing I want to briefly mention is overtime. So with overtime being cut, the problem is without those essential overnight workers, the road inside's not getting baited at the subway stations. So not only that's occurring, but overnight trash pickup is not occurring either with these overtime cuts from what Passengers United's been seeing on social media. So with that being all said, I see my time is about to go down, so I'm going to conclude my remarks. Thank you so much for letting me speak this month, and I plan on hopefully speaking again in May.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Monique Johnson, followed by Sasha Blair Goldenson.
Good morning. 7 long years ago this month in 2017, disability advocates sued the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators we depend on. 7 years, how long the MTA has dragged out this lawsuit. 7 years, all we want are elevators that don't break down when we're in the middle of a trip and all we want is effective communication systems so we know when the elevators are out. All we want are clean elevators and legal agreements so we can hold the MTA to its promise. 7 years. But what do we have instead? 7 years of the MTA, high prices, private lawyers earning 7 figures for what? No settlement or no progress. 7 years, the MTA, who may tell you that they won the case. Don't believe them. They haven't. The MTA is back in court with us next week along with Paul Witz, racking up hours. 7 years and 2 years since we settled 2 other subways action cases, which we are celebrating today. So we know that MTA can make a deal when it wants to. BART and San Francisco did a similar case a few days ago, and Boston did a year ago. 7 years, and how often? 7 months to replace an elevator, make a station accessible. Meanwhile, the MTA will be resigned the entire G line in 6 weeks. 7 years, the MTA telling you they're doing great jobs when people in wheelchairs.
Please
still
conclude
get
your
carried
remarks.
out in the station by
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Sasha Blair Goldenson. Please conclude your remarks.
Make a deal with this guaranteed working elevator. Don't touch me. For generations to come.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Sasha Blair Goldenson, followed by Giselle Martinez.
Good morning. 7 long years ago, this month, in 2017, we disability advocates sued the MTA, were forced to sue the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators we depend on to ride like everyone else. 7 years, that's how long the MTA has drawn out this lawsuit. 7 years, all we want are elevators that won't break down in the middle of a trip. We want effective communication systems so we know when an elevator is out. We need clean elevators and a legal agreement so that we can hold MTA and the governor to their promises. 7 years, but what do we have instead? 7 years of MTA lawyers earning 7 figures. For what? No settlement, no progress. 7 years. The MTA honchos will tell you they won the case. Don't believe it. They haven't. MTA will be back in court with us next week, along with the high-priced lawyers racking up hours. 7 years, when 2 years ago, in this room, we all celebrated together the settlement of 2 cases to build elevators, just like BART in San Francisco did a couple days ago, and Boston did a couple decades ago. 7 years, and often 7 months, that elevators go out of service, making an entire station inaccessible, while you can re-signal the entire G line in 6 weeks. 7 years of MTA saying they're doing a great job, while people like me are carried out of station with the fire department every day. 7 years. Nobody wants to hold up a giant 8 next year. Board members, tell Chair Leeper.
Please conclude your remarks.
Please tell Chair Leeper and Governor
Thank you for your
Hochul it is time
remarks.
to settle our case. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Giselle Martinez, followed by Deborah Greif.
Good morning. My name is Giselle Martinez, and I'm a bus operator out of the East New York Depot. Now, I am the Women's Committee Chair for the TWU Local 100, and I'm here in representation of the pregnant women that we have fighting this fight to get reasonable accommodation. I myself went through it. I have a miscarriage on the job while I was on probation because the probationary time, we're not supposed to take no sick days, no days off. We don't have nothing to rely on to continue to get paid for. Today, I am here standing in front of you with the support of the TWU Local 100 President, Richard Davis, the VP, John Pitafio, and I'm here to please ask you to make some changes to the system completely, not only for RTO, not only for a department, but the whole system. Having babies, it's not supposed to be punishing us for a natural cause. We are having babies to enlarge our families. We need to continue to get paid because it's not only a stressful moment that you have to be put out of work, no pay, but going home and not having the money to support your family. Do you think that's something that we should be going through? Not only having a baby inside your belly and going through the stress of having some difficulties with your pregnancy. I had 2 more babies after my miscarriage, and none of my pregnancy were accommodated until I got incidents on the job and went out on injury on duty. One of them taking me into a coma. So please take some.
Please conclude your remarks.
Thank you. Take some consideration to the women that are pregnant.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Deborah Greif, followed by Bruce Miller.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to talk about congestion pricing. I want to thank you. I was here last month when it was almost unanimously voted on. And I have to tell you, we had a mini preview this morning because we got on Accessor at 6:28, and we couldn't believe it. We knew we'd get up through Ocean Parkway onto the HOV lane into the tunnel very quickly because it usually happens. It's when we leave the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel, now known as Ucari, that it takes forever for us to get from the tunnel up Rector to come here to 2 Broadway. Shock of shock, there was nothing there. It only took us 33 minutes to actually get in here, which is a record for us. So if this is what congestion pricing is going to be, I'm looking forward to it. And I accept it as a early birthday gift for myself. And today, Mr. Christopher Greif, my child, it's his birthday, 41. I am very happy. And yes, I am concerned about our elevators being clean and accessible. I also would hope you please work with I had a very difficult pregnancy, so please work with your female bus drivers or employees who are pregnant. Please work and figure out accommodations to help them. Because I had 9 months of hell having the pregnancy, but once I gave birth, it was much easier. So please, let's help the women on the job. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Bruce Miller, followed by Joe Rappaport.
Good morning, Mr. Lieber and MTA members. My name is Bruce Miller. I have been an elected or appointed official in the Port Jefferson Village for over 4 decades. I invite our neighbor, Mr. Robert Free, to visit with us and visit with Stephen Englebright, our legislative representative, and leaders of the North Shore civic associations to discuss a type of future for a green Port Jefferson line. Mr. Englebright wrote New York's Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act and is a national leader in the environment. The MTA and the LAR really need to plan to address climate really needs to plan for some progress toward New York's green emissions. We need alternatives to brown diesel and some kind of participation in your 20-year plan. I have spoken with former President Ng and Long Island Railroad planners. The planners' suggestion of double tracking and electrifying the Port Jefferson branch is a pipe dream that cannot happen in 20 years. Side tracks, cuts outs could happen. Hydrogen might be possible. They will build a hydrogen train by Siemens in Germany and put it on the rails. Alstom is a New York subsidiary of Green GE and introduced a hydrogen train in 2016. The MTA has enormous purchasing power. If practical, this could create an entire new industry in New York. Or we could buy
Please
trains
conclude your
from the
remarks.
Germans in 20 years.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Joe Rappaport, followed by Latoya Christian.
Good morning. 7 long years ago this month, in 2017, disability advocates sued the MTA over the poor maintenance of the elevators many of us depend on. 7 years. That's how long the MTA has dragged out this lawsuit. 7 years. All we want are elevators that don't break down when we're in the middle of a trip. All we want is an effective communication system so we know when an elevator is out. All we want are clean elevators and a legal agreement so we can hold the MTA to its promises. 7 years. But what do we have instead? 7 years of the MTA's high-priced private lawyers earning 7 figures. For what? No settlement, no progress. 7 years that MTA honchos may tell you that they won the case. Don't believe them. They haven't. The MTA is back in court with us next week, along with those high-priced lawyers racking up hours. 7 years, and 2 years since we settled 2 other subway access cases, which we celebrated together. So we know the MTA can make a deal when it wants to, as BART in San Francisco did in a similar case a few days ago, and Boston did years ago. 7 years, and often 7 months to replace an elevator, making a station inaccessible. Meanwhile, the MTA will re-signal the entire G line in 6 weeks. 7 years of the MTA telling you they're doing a great job when people in wheelchairs are still getting carried out of stations by the fire department because one of the many elevators on their trip isn't working. 7 years. No one wants to hold up a giant 8 next year. Board members, tell the chair and the governor it's time to make a real deal that will guarantee working elevators for generations to come. I hope you're getting the message. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Latoya Christian, followed by Patrick W. Condren.
How you doing? My name is Latoya Christian, and I'm here on behalf of Reasonable Accommodations for Pregnant Women. I've been on the job for 2.5 years, and I did not realize that I would be in this situation, financial hardship, going through financial hardship right now because there's no such thing as reasonable accommodations at MTA. The accommodations is not as reasonable as they say. We have RTO, who is allowed 1 month reasonable accommodations, and they give us 10 days. And half the time, the 10 days a lot of us are not being approved. I got a letter of termination. I didn't know that you can get terminated for being pregnant or having a child. We are in a stage where they're hiring more female bus operators, childbearing. And we have to be unemployed, might be unemployed. That isn't fair. I put a lot of time and effort into working. Having a child is not a disability. There's jobs out there for us to do. There's jobs in the depot for us to do. There's 800 people, 900 people in the depot, and there's no jobs for bus operators? It's ridiculous. I love my job. I love my job. I love to bus operate. We provide service. But this is a disservice. It's disgusting. Disgusting behavior. And there needs to be, there's change. It needs to happen. There's change. And it should be changed. We have to do better. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Patrick Condren, followed by Jesse Figueroa.
Good morning. I am Patrick Condren, the head of the Bus for NYC Coalition here in New York, representing many of the private operators, and we thank Chair Lieber and the board for recognizing, once again, the participation of the public transit contribution that private operators participate here in New York, including Academy Bus, Hampton Jitney, Transbridge, and others, who hold New York State DOT Authority, Interstate Commerce Commission Authority, and also FMCSA Authority. Notwithstanding that, we look forward to some of the clarity and working with you on interstate and intrastate authorities that provide this commuter service going forward, and we look forward to meeting with City Transit and coordinating some of the other things that we do with the bus operators on the Metropolitan Transportation Authority side. So once again, we look forward to working with you and clarifying intrastate operators as we move forward in this public transportation system that you do a great job with, and we look forward to helping out a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is Jesse Figueroa, followed by Gary Rodriguez.
Go ahead. Good morning, everybody. Jesse Figueroa here, U.S. Army veteran, disabled veteran, member of the Long Island Railroad 88 Task Force. I'm here to talk about safety is our highest priority, includes accessibility, and also, I'm not going to talk about, much today, but also I believe in diversity. We are in a diverse city. We all need to be treated with respect, especially expectant mothers. Either it's MTA personnel, bus operators, train operators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I believe that also that in the disabled community, especially our veterans, need to have respect, and we all need to work together as a family. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Gary Rodriguez, followed by Joseph Morales.
I'm sorry, I think they got a mix up with the name. Is Gary Rosario. So I've been employed by New York City Transit Authority for 25 years. Proud employee of the Transit Authority. I have made major accomplishments for my family, for my children, being employed by New York City Transit Authority. And I am confident that I am here sitting among some educated employees and leaders that make decisions for us that work for New York City Transit Authority. I am confident that you guys will collaborate together to try to come up with a strategic plan for reasonable accommodation. These are women that we trying to help. They want to work. They don't want to get paid to stay home. And it's encouraging to see them bring themselves here to this important board meeting to represent themselves. They don't want somebody else to do the work for them. They're willing to do the work themselves. And I take a lot of their calls and a lot of their complaints, and I make it personal. And I want you to make it personal, because many of us have moms, we have daughters-in-laws, females that have become pregnant while working. And maybe if they're not accommodated because they don't work for an agency as powerful as ours, we have to help them ourselves. So I'm appealing to you guys to please come up with a plan that we can all be confident that we will be taken care of working for the New York City Transit Authority. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Joseph Morales, followed by Michael Ring.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Joseph Morales. I want to speak on a few contracts that I see in the board book to be voted on today. One is the ABLE contract with Sion that I noticed after reading was suspended over a patent-related preliminary injunction filed by Hayden AI, another company, in federal court, and it was eventually denied. This led, I noticed, to the MTA planning to purchase more ABLE equipment from Hayden and then resuming talks with Sion. I have a feeling this may have made the process a little more difficult for us, and I understand this is really out of the MTA's control because of all the legal issues, but I feel like the agency should explore putting more measures in place to prevent similar disputes from occurring in the future that could affect the operations, because as time goes on, we're going to continue innovating with more transportation technologies. Think cashless tolling in recent years. And the MTA, I know Jano and Jamie have worked a lot on this in the past, between design build, more A+B contracts when it comes to construction and development, and now we're really going to need more mechanisms when it comes to technologies. So I feel like that's something really important. Also, speaking of technologies, with the new Easy Pass transponders contract, I'm thrilled that the MTA is finding ways to save on those transponders through sticker tags. I talked about it with Kathy and the Bridges and Tunnels Committee yesterday. However, I still believe that we should try and create a national toll pass. I wanted to bring it up to the whole board today, see what everyone thought, work with other states to ensure that out-of-state motorists who pass through New York regularly are paying their tolls and they pay conveniently. And lastly, I fully support the MTA's plans to increase awareness of the monthly city ticket discounts as congestion pricing gets underway. I feel like it is imperative that we do that outreach, and we also do outreach on the other transit discounts that outer borough residents have, and that may appeal to them. That way we're ensuring that everyone has the most affordable rides possible and that they use mass transit as much as possible. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker will be Michael Ring, followed by John Patafio.
Good morning. My name is Michael Ring. If anyone needs a description of my appearance, I'm wearing a green hat that says Disabled in Action. That's the organization I'm representing. I'm holding a 7 in my hands, a cardboard 7, and I like to think I look like a guy that can handle all sorts of challenges. I'm also not going to stick to the script because it's a little bit personal. 10 years ago, I acquired my disability. I was mostly paralyzed. I could not walk. I could not walk at all. I came home from the hospital. I could not climb stairs. I used a wheelchair. I used a wheelchair for about 2 years. So 10 years ago, 8 years ago, and 7 years ago, I used a wheelchair. I never took the subway. It never occurred to me to take the subway. I knew how to use apps. I know how to find out where the elevators are. I knew where they were. I knew how to find out if the elevator might be broken. I didn't trust it. I didn't want to get stuck going from point A to point B. I didn't want to be in the middle. People who still use wheelchairs are staying home because they can't count on the elevator working between where they live and where they want to go to work. When you travel, you're going to wind up using 5 elevators to go from one place to another, and you're going to use 5 to come home. It's an approximation. That's 10. That's 50 elevator trips a week. If you can't count on those 50 all functioning, you're going to stay home. People who can't climb stairs are leading unproductive lives. They're not working. They're not paying taxes because they can't count on the elevator working. Settle the case. Show the world the elevators are going to work and more people will pay taxes and get to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Our next speaker is John Patafio, followed by Omar Vera.
I am John Patafio. Everybody knows me as JP. I know quite a few people in this room. I am the union vice president for Brooklyn Buses. Those members that spoke all drive buses out of Brooklyn. And it's a glaring problem. When I started 28 years ago, there were 5 female bus operators. What was our issue? A locker room and a restroom. Today, there's 1,000. As a matter of fact, today's class that you're hiring has female operators. Some of them are pregnant. This issue is fundamentally an issue of discrimination. Why do female operators have to suffer for doing something that's, as far as I know, no one else could do. It's biological. Why do they have to use their sick time, their vacation time? Why do they have to go unpaid? I'm asking the board to give the managers the room they need to negotiate. I'm willing to come to the table. I've come to the table. But they need room. Management on the transit side needs room. And I'm going to tell you something. This issue is not going away. My members are fully behind it. If we have to pack up this room, that will not be a problem. But we prefer to negotiate something. It is disrespectful, and I have to say, very upsetting that women have to go through this in this industry on this job. And I'm going to tell you, in closing, it will not be tolerated. We want to see something that's fair, and we want to see something that's just, and we're asking you, stop this discriminatory policy that penalizes females for pregnancy. Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Our final speaker will be Omar Vera.
Good morning, MTA Board. Man, I wish the board meetings were at 10 again, but okay. First, I'll just say, just heed the demands and wishes of many of the activists here today, because they all have legitimate concerns, and we need to make the system better, not worse. Second, I like to say, looking forward to when congestion pricing is implemented on June 30th. But like I said, hopefully one day in the near future, you can extend the congestion pricing zone to downtown Brooklyn, as they need it as well. Third, I'm looking forward to seeing the complete R211 rollout, because I noticed when I rode an R46W this morning, the number was 5894, the car, which was taken from the Pitkin yard, the A and the C trains, and now it's part of the Coney Island yard stuff. So we're already seeing the R211 replacing the R46 in action. We're looking for, and remember, CBTC, you want to implement CBTC on 8th Avenue, right? So we need like the R211s there. So the 46s need to be gone from 8th Avenue in order for that to be a reality. And speaking of CBTC, I would like to make a name correction, because regarding the line, because I know you're implementing it now on Crosstown, but you're including the northern part of the Culver line as part of the Crosstown route. So rather than just saying Crosstown, which is only from Court Square to Hoyt Schermerhorn, so the Culver begins at Bergen Street, so the line from Bergen to Church should be called Culver North, and then from Ditmas to Coney Island, Culver South. Thank you, and I'll see you later.
Thank you for your remarks. Chairman Lieber, we have reached the allotted time for this public comment session. At this time, we ask the remaining registered speakers to stand by as we transition to a separate live recording session. If you are a remote public speaker participating on Zoom, please stand by and wait for further instructions from the moderator. Public speakers in the room, please join us in conference room 4. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you, Danny, and thank you to members of the public who spoke today. General Counsel Paige Graves, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
Can I just ask one question about the public speakers? Is it possible to learn later on more about the issue that's been raised around disability, pregnancy,
It's actually a
and
matter in
accommodation?
litigation, so
Okay.
we handle it as
In
an
executive session?
matter.
Fine, thank you.
Before I provide an update to the board and dive into regular board business, the board will convene an executive session to discuss matters relevant to collective bargaining. So I need a motion to convene an executive session.
So moved.
Thank you. Second, Ms. Lopez, all in favor? We're in executive session.
I think if there are no customer service ambassadors, there would be lots and lots of people taking the wrong train.
A customer service ambassador is a frontline contact providing fast-changing, accurate information, especially during service disruptions.
We're here to direct you, assist you, and be patient as well.
The qualities that make a good customer service ambassador are patience, communication, following instructions, and just pretty much being a people person.
Getting lost in New York it's really easy. That's what we're here for, to help them. So every day, I show people how to use the phone. We have this app called Train Time. It tells you the time everything comes, schedule changes, tells you advanced scheduling as well in case you need to come in a week.
My most memorable day at work, we had an elderly woman come off of the airport. We assisted her to getting to her family, which was in another town. She had never been to New York before. She was completely lost. She thanked us several times, and I was able to help this woman get to her family. That's the motivation. Just helping people in general is seeing their face.
I like to help people a lot. You know, seeing people happy and getting to their place.
It makes me feel really happy, especially that I know they're getting to their destination safely. We serve with pride.
Sometimes the public may call us train drivers. Honestly, it doesn't bother me because I know they don't know. My name is Keisha Cole. I'm a train operator, and I've been with MTA for 6 years. I work on the 7 line. It's approximately 21 stops from Main Street to 34th Street, and it takes about 36 minutes from end to end.
My name is Jim Van Name. I'm a train operator for New York City Transit. I've been here about 3.5 years. I operate the train on the Q line, which end to end is approximately 44 stops, and it takes me about an hour to complete.
My earliest train memory is I was a kid. I got on the F train with my mom. The first time I was on the train, I was excited. It was fun.
I was raised on Staten Island, and my friends and I used to take the Staten Island ferry over to the city, and we used to ride the train all over the place. That's probably where I got my first love of the subways.
As a train operator, there are 2 different ways you can pick up your train. You can pick up your train in the yard as a put-in, which means you okay your train for service and bring it into the terminal station, which is the last stop on the train line. Or you can actually pick it up from the terminal station. When preparing my train for service, I do various checks to make sure it's safe for myself and for the public. Once my day starts, I have about 3 round trips. I take passengers from Main Street to 34th Street and back to Main Street. That's 1 round trip.
I start over at the yard, and then I have to do what we call a put-in. I have to prep the train for service, and then they send me out over to Stillwell Terminal, and then I go into service. I do my 2 trips up to 96th Street and back, and that pretty much completes my day. It usually takes anywhere from 8 to 8.5 hours. At the end of the day, the 2 ways of finishing the job is to just walk off the train at the terminal station at the last stop and just sign out and go home, or to do a layup, take the train from the terminal station back to the yard, lay it up, put it away for the evening, and go home from there.
I love the fact that I'm moving this big machine by myself. There have been times when I'm operating the train and I think that this is the greatest job ever. The things that I get to see when I'm going down the line and I'm seeing the sun come up, it's just so beautiful.
This is my dream job. I love this job. And some of the amazing moments I see in this job is when I'm going over the Manhattan Bridge, sometimes at sunrise to see the sun coming up, or even better, sunset, to see the sun setting behind the Manhattan Bridge is quite a sight. I pinch myself that I'm in such a great job and have that opportunity to see such great things.
I enjoy transporting people from place to place. It's just a good thing. I feel like I'm doing something special.
I love trains. I love operating the trains. I love being a part of New York City Transit. And knowing that I'm helping people get through their day and get to where they need to be gives me a lot of satisfaction.
What does a depot bus dispatcher do?
My name is Veronica Torres. I'm a surface line dispatcher. I've been with Transit for 15 years, but I've been a dispatcher for about 6 months. Being a dispatcher is a big opportunity to broaden my experiences. I like working with people, so that also gives me an opportunity to interact with the bus operators and other people as well. From the time that the bus operators come to report, we have to make sure that they're in full uniform, that they're fit for duty. Then we also have to give them the buses to go out into service, make sure that the service is done on time, that the buses are safe and fully functional. Dispatchers that are outside on post are watching the buses, make sure that they run on time, making sure that the customers are okay, answering questions on the road, making sure safety and compliance is at 100.
We have the yard dispatchers, we have the crew dispatchers, and we have the general dispatchers. And these are all various functions. In addition to all these three functions, we also have the road dispatchers who goes out on the road to take care of the day-to-day activities on the road.
Patience and empathy make for a great dispatcher. Because I've been a bus operator for so long, I understand what it is that they do and what it entails, and I'm very empathetic to what their needs are. What we do is so important as a whole. Without the dispatchers' cohesiveness and working together, the bus operators also in unison with us, because we can't do our job without the bus operators also doing their job. So with everyone working together, it just makes for a smooth process.
What does an electronic equipment maintainer do?
Paul Julian, electronic equipment maintainer. I've been in transit for 5 years. I work in the department of RSS, Radio and Security Systems. Our responsibility is to ensure that the radio system is functioning very efficiently, for that provides communication to the trains. It also provides crucial and important communication for the police in the system, the EMS in the system, and the fire department in the transit system. Also, the surveillance system must be maintained. Therefore, we can have proper security and proper recording of activities in the subway system. The intrusion alarm system must also be maintained. These security systems are responsible for preventing, and if it happens, to alert any breach, whether it's the breach of a door that has sensitive equipment beyond it, or whether someone enters the tunnel beyond the platform without permission. A key motivator in what we do is to know how important communication, surveillance, and security is.
Okay, we're back in session. While in executive session, the board discussed and voted affirmatively on a labor agreement between MTA and certain labor unions. So I'll turn to remarks for this meeting. Good morning, and thank you to everybody for joining us for this month's meeting of the MTA Board. A lot has happened since we last met. You might have heard about the start date for congestion pricing, more on that in a minute. But the state legislature, led by Governor Hochul, also passed another budget that recognizes in significant ways the importance the MTA has to the region. We scored some major wins, including $8 billion in operating support, new powers to more equitably enforce against fare and toll evasion, and more than $12 million to help us improve reliability and increase frequency on buses. Also, funding for the Interborough Express design process, something the governor's passionate about and we at MTA C&D are passionate about as well, and funding to study a potential third phase of the 2nd Avenue subway, that westward expansion along 125th Street that Governor Hochul included in her State of the State address back in January. And we can't forget the housing provisions. We're going to hear about this at some length today. The housing provisions that will allow the MTA to pursue new transit-oriented development opportunities like what's being done in Wyandanch and Westbury and Ronkonkoma out on Long Island and Harrison and Westchester, and opportunities as well in the city of New York. And we've got the Chairman of the City Planning Commission to help us along that way here with us as well. You're going to hear a lot more about it today from our Director of Transit-Oriented Development, Bob Paley. But while the state budget was being put to bed, something else happened. With Governor Hochul and Mayor Adams leading the way, remember cops, cameras, and care, remember all that investment in mental health outreach, particularly for the severely mentally ill. Because of all that, crime has plummeted in the New York City subway system. Last week, there was a 33% drop in subway crime versus the equivalent week in 2023. Year to date, after some problems in January, but year to date, we have already pushed subway crime 6.5% below 2023, and we are now lower by 11% compared to pre-pandemic. This is not properly understood, but we are well below pre-pandemic subway crime levels. Emblematic of this shift, yesterday there was one index crime in the New York City subway system, one. Last month we were averaging 4. We are headed in the right direction. Big leadership from these two elected officials and big results. With the budget behind us, we can now start focusing on the capital program that this board, in probably our single biggest challenge once congestion pricing begins to be implemented, is the adoption of a new 2025 to 2029 capital plan. We've been talking about the need to prioritize climate resiliency in that plan. Last week, we took a major step forward in those efforts by unveiling the new MTA Climate Resiliency Roadmap. It outlined $6 billion in needs over the next decade to make the transit system more resilient against accelerating impacts of climate change, torrential rainfall, extreme heat, and all different types of severe weather brought on by climate change. So we have copies of the book for the board on your way out. This is like the 20-year needs assessment, which was a really historic, first of its kind effort. This is a detailed blueprint of how do we start dealing with climate change. And it is going to, I think, chart the way for us as we start to deal with the capital program. Huge kudos to Jamie and the entire team at MTA C&D. Because, as I always say, transit is the antidote to climate change. The MTA system allows New York to have the lowest greenhouse gas emissions, the lowest carbon footprint per capita in the nation because of our low greenhouse gas emissions. It's counterintuitive, but New York is actually the greenest city in the country by a lot. And we want to reduce that footprint even more by transitioning to a fully zero-emissions bus fleet. Frank Anaccara, Senior Vice President of Buses, is here with Sunil Nair, the Vice President who is leading the zero-emissions bus transition. And they will have an update on that program in a few minutes. A big down payment on those buses is, of course, going to come from the congestion pricing revenues. By now, you've all heard that we have a start date for collecting tolls, June 30th. It's a Saturday night going into Sunday. The first people to pay the toll will pay $3.75, which is the deeply discounted overnight rate on the weekends from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. And that's exactly 2 months from today, barring, of course, any delay in the final federal approval process or from the litigation that we continue to contest with our friends across the river. In preparation for day one, we've opened the application portals for the discounts and exemptions for congestion pricing with detailed information on who qualifies and how to apply. That list includes low-income New Yorkers, individuals with disabilities and the organizations that transport them, emergency vehicles, buses, and specialized government vehicles. That is the result of a lot of work we did with our new board member, Deputy Mayor Joshi. The portals and our website are just one part of the comprehensive public education campaign we'll be carrying out over the next 2 months. More advertisements like the ones you've seen these past few weeks, but also a lot of in-person community events, civic and business outreach, virtual webinars, email campaigns, and much, much more. Shout out to the customer communications team. Shanifa, where are you? Shout out to you and everybody who is doing this work and will continue to do this work right up to June 30th and beyond, and also to our external relations teams led by John McCarthy. Yet still, people ask all the time, are we really ready for congestion pricing? Some doubt about how the transit system is functioning, but this board knows the transit system is actually doing great. Just yesterday, we announced we're going to be adding express bus service on routes in Brooklyn and Staten Island. We have additional bus routes that are getting more frequency. We're enjoying the best in a decade subway service. Tip of the hat to Rich and Demetrius Critchlow. There have been increases in frequency on 11 lines, and the commuter railroads are delivering a combined 97.5% on-time performance. Several days, as I always say, of 100% on Metro North, and Rob Free commanded a 100% morning on Long Island Railroad in the last week or so. And even with the ridership rebound that's been taking place on weekdays, we are still carrying 1 million fewer subway, bus, and commuter rail riders than we did pre-pandemic, say in 2019. So there is plenty of room. I want to emphasize this because the press frequently misleads folks about this. There is plenty of room for the roughly 23,000 drivers who are projected to switch from private cars to transit. Heck, we could accommodate all 140,000 people who currently commute by automobile to the CBD if they want to get on mass transit. 140,000 customers is the swing that we see on a day when they move the forecast from drizzle to heavy rain. There is plenty of room for everybody who wants to come and enjoy this amazing mass transit system we've got. Another reason for confidence as we head towards congestion pricing implementation is the paratransit system. Since Chris Pangilinan took over, customer satisfaction with paratransit has surged to an unprecedented 80%. And I want to congratulate Chris on becoming the new head of operations planning at Transit, where he started his career at New York City Transit. And also congrats to Rich Davey and the folks, everybody who's running both railroads, subways, and all of our system for such great service improvements and such great execution. Kudos also to Jamie Torres-Springer and the team at MTA Construction Development. Our success delivering excellent service on subways and commuter rail is partly attributable to all the capital work getting done. Track replacements like we did along the 63rd Street corridor, which is seen in that photo. Signals, power, all of this state of good repair we're starting to educate folks about, and it's so essential to the continued high functioning of our system. A lot of that work is getting done now, and it is playing a role in the improvement in service that we're seeing. Projects are getting completed on time and on budget. We heard about 3 major projects that were hitting those targets yesterday, and keeping systems and components, as I say, in condition to deliver great service is part of the benefit of our capital program. Operations and capital are closely linked. So to me, skeptical questions about congestion pricing really put me in mind of a set of other questions. Are we ready to be a leader? Is New York, which is first in the nation in traffic and congestion and the negative effects of having gridlock, are we ready to be the first in the nation and lead on attacking the problem? Are we ready to embrace who we are? A mass transit city of necessity because of our density. We cannot survive without a first-class mass transit system. Are we ready to prioritize the vast majority of New Yorkers who use transit, who rely on the MTA, 6 million people daily, even after the pandemic, over the 140,000 who drive to the central business district? Are we ready to have cleaner air? Because the projections and the analysis that we did at the behest of the federal government shows that every single pollutant in our air is reduced as a result of congestion pricing. Are we ready to have safer streets? Under Mayor Adams' leadership, last year was a good year for pedestrian safety, but this year hasn't been so great so far. Are we ready to heed the words of those people who came to our hearings and talked about how scared they are to cross streets in their neighborhood, and how many of them have suffered traffic violence and even lost relatives in these crowded, congested conditions? For me, the answer is we are ready. This board gave the same answer by 11-1. Now it's time to show the rest of the country and the world that we can do it. Let me turn it over to Frank, Anna Caro, and Sunil to talk about the Zero Emissions Bus Initiative, and then we'll hear from Jamie and Bob Paley about transit-oriented development. Frank.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, board members. As we celebrate Earth Day this month, it's fitting to present to you the quick progress update on zero emissions transition work and the various initiatives we have underway. Firstly, I want to set the stage by mentioning that New York City Transit is working hard to ensure that we will transition all our buses, paratransit fleet, and our non-revenue vehicles to a zero-emission basis by 2040. This mandate that the MTA in the state of New York publicly announced back in 2018, and we remain committed to achieving this mandate for the agency. You got to go back one, please. As this chart shows, the strategy developed by Zero Emissions team ensures progressive increase in the quantity of zero-emission buses that will normally be replaced in each capital plan, starting with the current plan. We are working closely with our partners in construction development to ensure alignment at each stage of the capital planning process to get us to transition all 5,900 buses by stage 4. Maybe you're missing a slide. Jump back, please. Excuse me. This is a momentous transition, giving us an opportunity to avoid approximately 500,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases. This greenhouse gas avoidance is over and above the approximately 20 million metric tons that we currently avoid by virtue of having the current transportation network in New York City. Looking at the transition initiatives included in the current capital plan, I'm happy to report that we're working hard to meet this challenge. As we always mention, buses are engines of equity for New Yorkers. MTA buses serve a disproportionate share of low-income and minority households compared to other modes of transportation. As part of zero-emission transition, this team is committed to prioritizing equity and environmental justice in the rollout of depots and routes to ensure that the benefits of zero emissions accrue to those communities most impacted. Other factors include equitable borough distribution, power supply availability, construction feasibility, and schedule feasibility. In a nutshell, over 500 zero-emission buses and associated infrastructure is planned for deployment across multiple depots in all 5 boroughs. This year, we will begin taking delivery of 60 battery electric buses coming to 4 depots. In parallel, we are working to get infrastructure ready at 5 new depots as we take delivery of the 205 battery electric buses that this board approved back in December. Over and above that, we will use the procurement option that will allow us to secure another 265 battery electric buses that were slated to arrive at another 6 depots in 2027. The addition of these 500 electric buses in the next few years will be a game changer, not only for operations, but workforce development and service delivery. We're proud of many milestones achieved when we deliver these 60 all-electric buses this year. These are our first standard 40-foot purchase of electric buses. This is the first time we are installing autonomous pantograph charging dispensers. This is the first time we were working closely with Con Ed to source new power at a depot, and this is our first partnership with NYPA, New York Power Authority, on MTA and building out this infrastructure. To demonstrate the automation of capabilities of this pantograph charging, I want to show you a short clip. Let's hope I get this right. And it's as simple as that. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Sunil Nair, our Vice President of Zero Emission Fleet Technologies, and he's going to talk about a broad industry overview and some lessons learned, some developments in the fuel cell technology and the work that we have undertaken with the FDA. Yes,
Frank, can I just ask you, how many depots have that cool charging?
So right now,
station?
there's 1 installed, and how many are for this 60? It's 1?
Yeah, so right now we have 1 depot installed. Right now we have 1 depot installed with another 60 of those automated pantograph systems coming on the property by the end of this year. Yeah, I think it's. Thank you, Frank. Good morning, board members and Chair Lieber. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you and give you an update on zero emissions. Broad observations with respect to zero emissions itself. As we all know, there is a zero emissions premium on buses and charging infrastructure, which means that the zero emission costs, both for buses as well as the charging infrastructure that you just saw, are expensive compared to your regular fossil fuel buses. So agencies across the country are taking into account this additional capital costs that need to be factored into their budgets. This is critically important. The MTA is doing a lot of work in this area. We've actually put in for a low-no grant to the federal government to ask for more funding in this space. In fact, the grant was put in just a week back. Earlier this month, we put in an EPA grant. So we are availing of all opportunities and avenues to make sure that we get the funding to cover these shortfalls. But these buses are expensive. Multiple transit agencies are seeing the same challenges, and I just want to mention the other challenge that we are facing is that bus equipment manufacturers in the United States are dwindling at this time. We had a recent loss of Novabus. Proterra and Eldorado Bus are either stopping their bus manufacturing in the United States or will soon be stopping. eBusco is another company that we talked to in Europe and we have been working with, but they have signaled that they're primarily looking at the European market given the increased sort of priority there too in Europe as compared to America. So that's understandable. But rest assured, we are working really hard with existing manufacturers in the United States as well as across the pond in Europe to source additional bus manufacturers. The third piece that I want to just bring to the fore is that multiple transit agencies around the country are understanding that a rationalized utility rate structure, specifically when it comes to public transit charging, is critically important to balancing operating budgets. This is key, and I think there's a lot of support around the country to make sure that utility rates are harmonized specifically for public charging. This is not for private charging. This is for public transit charging. So that's slowly gaining in momentum across the country. And lastly, as one of our speakers was mentioning, the advent of hydrogen, specifically the work that the federal government have been doing in popularizing hydrogen across the country, specifically in terms of opening up 7 separate hydrogen hubs in the country, is sure to kickstart the development of hydrogen as a alternative propulsion fuel for our zero emissions program. We will talk about the work that we are doing on hydrogen very soon, in a couple of slides right after. That said, what are we doing to ensure that we are future-proofed as we start to expand on not just the 60 buses, but also the 205 buses that Frank was talking about? We are working with our internal agency partners. We are working with C&D specifically to make sure that any kind of work that's happening at our depots in terms of state of good repair, additional construction work, or other normal refurbishment work is in line and is in concert with the zero emissions work that we are undertaking there. That is key so that we don't get into each other's way. So a lot of that advanced work is happening. Another big positive in this space is the extremely good collaboration that we've had with Con Edison. We've built up a working group with Con Edison with full visibility from their leadership in ensuring that they understand our forward plans, they understand our immediate priorities, they understand our power loading needs at each of our depots. This way, the cultivation of that relationship and that working group is going a long way in ensuring that we have full support from our electrification partners, Con Edison. A couple of other things that we are doing is on the charging infrastructure front, we are working with multiple charger manufacturers in terms of pre-qualifying them so that we don't waste time once the contract is awarded. We have qualified them, they are Buy America Act compliant, and we can work with them right away. So that's a big key piece in terms of reducing timelines and making sure that we hit our 2040 deadline. Locking in prices from charger manufacturers is another key step. This way, once you head into actual design build, you have these pre-negotiated pricing which you can fall back on, leading to less change orders in the long run. And then, of course, lastly, it's not just the dispenser that you see. There's a lot of additional pieces of infrastructure that stand behind the dispenser that you just saw in the video that Frank showed. There are things like switch gears. There are things like transformers, conduits, and additional networking equipment. Some of them have long lead items. Some of them have lead times of approximately 12 months. So we are pre-ordering those long lead items as soon as possible right after the contract is awarded. So we are appropriately future-proofing ourselves to make sure that we are up for the challenge that comes ahead. That said, we are also working with the FTA in terms of making sure that both the bus manufacturers as well as other transit agencies are listening to some of the needs that's kind of percolating up from multiple transit agencies. And in this sense, President Davey had recently traveled out to DC to work with FTA administrators, bus manufacturers, as well as transit agency heads to really bring to the fore some of the big challenges in the zero emission space. And in this sense, right after that, the FTA released what's called a Dear Colleague letter that laid out specific guidelines to transit agencies in terms of special financing tools that are available. For example, things like advance payments, milestone payments, how to work for price increases and things like that. So the guidance from the FTA is super useful and will actually move the industry ahead, both the bus manufacturers as well as transit agencies, to move it ahead to some of these goals. Also, I'm happy to say that the MTA is leading an all-agency review across multiple large transit agencies in the country in the development of what's called a common specification. A common specification is critical because and it's hoped that we would reach there, but it's critical so that bus manufacturers can build to a base spec or a base bus, and then agency-specific kind of technology accoutrements can be put on that base bus, reducing costs, increasing the throughput of buses on their production line, and generally increasing efficiency. So all of these are really setting us in a good stage for the future, in terms of expansion. Some of the good news that that's happening in parallel while we get those 60 buses this year, while we get those 205 buses starting next year, is we are looking across how do we expand our existing kind of vendor pool to get new vendors into the space. And in this sense, we have a test and evaluate program that we have programmed with the existing capital plan and our capital planning budget people that will get 2 potential new bus vendors in the space with 5 buses each, which means that we are getting a total of 10 buses from 2 brand new manufacturers. And that's we have representative pictures right here. Those are not the real buses, but these buses would come to the property in the 2025 to 2026 timeline. We have a Solaris bus from Europe and the MCI coach bus. And the exciting thing about the MCI coach bus is that that's the first time we would get into a 45-foot coach business in the zero emission space. So that's quite exciting. And lastly, as I was talking about the potential for hydrogen to actually transform the zero emission space. Hydrogen as a fuel we think it has a lot of potential in the space. Firstly, in the fact that the operational characteristics that we have understood from the West Coast in terms of running zero-emission buses closely mirror that of our existing operating characteristics at our depot. That's a big win for us. Secondly, the range of these buses are consistently about 300 miles, which is great because cold weather does not affect these buses like they do for battery buses. Long story short, we have 2 of these pilot buses coming to the property first quarter of next year. We would be testing them in revenue service, understanding their characteristics, and that will inform the next steps with respect to the capital plan. The good part here is that FDNY has been super helpful in terms of getting to all of the permitting requirements that are required because hydrogen is a new fuel. We are all new to the space. FDNY has been super cooperative, and we feel that we have a really good path forward in terms of next steps. That's really all I had at this time, but happy to answer any questions, and thank you very much for the opportunity here.
I just want to recognize that you mentioned it, but Rich Davey has been co-chairing this national task force that the White House chartered to figure out how to grow domestic capacity and just capacity in general for the production of zero emissions buses, because everybody's getting into this business. So thank you to Rich for a lot of those standards that Sunil mentioned came out of Rich's group and Rich's leadership. So thank you for that. Questions or comments? Jamie Barbas.
Real happy to see the work on hydrogen. It's very exciting, and I'm glad that, Rich, I didn't know you were so involved in that. That's fantastic as well. And the work on commonality and common technology is fantastic. When you look at your long lead items, are you also looking to the view that they would need to be of compatibility of any system that then gets adopted or manufacturer that gets adopted?
So the short answer is absolutely yes. A specific example is the long lead item of switch gears, and we are taking into account all of the specifications that we use for existing switch gears, make sure that that's in the specs and in the functional descriptions and things like that. So absolutely yes, yeah.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I just want to understand the trajectory that we're on. So there's 60 battery electric buses that are coming this year, 205 coming in quarter 4 2025, and then there's an option for more buses. Is that correct?
Yep.
But by 2040, we are 100% zero emissions.
Mm-hmm.
So is that the rough path that we expect to be on over the number of buses per year right through 2040? Can you give us a sense? Does it peak at a certain point, or is it crunched at the end, or is it just a consistent number over time?
So this slide is basically what is in our transition plan that we published. So it's over the next 4 capital plans, well, the current and the next 3 capital plans. So it's it's transitioning right up. And something that's important that Sunil mentioned earlier is that we're collaborating closely with our C&D partners to make sure that, you know, we're taking equal bites of the apple when we're transitioning here, right? We're not looking at, you know, certainly we could have said, hey, let's do the low-hanging fruit in stage 1 and 2 and then try to go for the harder stuff. That's not how we're doing it. There's equally taking a bite of the apple right across so that, you know, there's consistency, and the lessons that we learned in stage 1 and stage 2 are just become autonomous into stage 3 and 4.
I might just add 2 things from a capital program point of view on that, Chair. First of all, just to remind us, the 265 buses out of the 500 or so remaining in this capital program are funded by congestion pricing. So we do need to successfully launch and get through the litigation on congestion pricing before we're able to proceed with the current plan. And then second, as Frank said, we're in the midst of developing the next capital program that's due to the board this fall, and incorporating projections. I mean, there is a significant cost increment around moving to battery electric buses. It's a commitment the MTA has made, and that'll be part of the next capital program. And of course, another part of the ramp up is what Sunil was speaking to, which is really developing the economy of bus manufacturers that can meet our needs here. So it's a constraint both of funding and also of supply.
Mr. Albert.
Thank you for the presentation. From the time that very cool pantograph charger starts touching a standard size 40-foot bus, how long to fully charge it?
So that's a really good question. And I'm not trying to duck the question, but it depends on the state of charge of the incoming bus. If the bus is completely empty in terms of charge, it would take approximately 4 hours to charge up the bus if the battery size is 600 kilowatt hours. So it depends on the charging rate, it depends on the size of the battery, and the level at which the bus comes in. So it's a multiple set of parameters.
So the longest time would be?
Between 4 to 5 hours, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Glucksman, then Mr. Bringerman.
Could we just, a great presentation. Got to see the slide with the demo buses, please. Thank you.
With that, go ahead, Mr. Bringerman.
No, I just wanted to make a comment that I was thrilled that hydrogen is something that you're investigating. I'm more interested in see how you guys make out, because there's going to become a time in the not too distant future we're going to need to replace our diesel fleet on the Long Island Railroad, possibly Metro North, and hydrogen could be an option for us. They have hydrogen trains in Germany. They're running quite successful with vendors that we're familiar with. So I'm going to be anxious to see how you make out with the buses, and then hopefully maybe we can take that over to commuter rail.
Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments, thank you again to Frank and Sunil and Rich and the whole transit and MTA bus team. Over to Jamie to introduce the transit-oriented development presentation.
Thanks, Chair. As you said, I mean, we often emphasize around here that it's an era of investment in major capital projects for the transit system. It's also an era in the city and region in investment in housing and transit-oriented development as an element of that. You mentioned in the budget passed last week, the governor is creating a $500 million housing infrastructure fund to support transit-oriented development, in particular in the suburbs. Of course, we acknowledge that our new board member, Chair Gorodnick, and his City Planning Commission certified major new citywide zoning effort that includes a significant transit-oriented development set of opportunities yesterday into the city's land use review process. So as all that's going on, the MTA is doing our part. We have built a transit-oriented development group under Bob Paley over many years that's working on a variety of fronts, and we wanted to ask Bob to brief the board on the status of those efforts.
Great, thank you, Jamie. I'm pleased to be here to give you an update on MTA's TOD activities. Compact development in close proximity to our stations supports MTA in many ways. It adds new riders, creates more convenient and attractive access to transit, and generates value to support our capital investments. Our region developed around transit, and MTA TOD's work to connect economic growth and housing near transit is modeled on these earlier examples. Grand Central Terminal was planned and financed by the New York Central Company with development along Park Avenue, and in doing so, they connected the region and generated revenue from that development on Park Avenue. Our greatly admired early suburbs were typically planned and developed around transit. The twin goals to connect the region and create value remain the same today, but coordinated planning and investment is more difficult than it was 100 years ago. Property ownership is fragmented and land use regulation is complex. MTA created the TOD group to take a developer's perspective and identify today's opportunities to connect development with transit and to tap the value that proximity creates. We use our understanding of market demand, real estate transactions, and land use regulatory tools. Collaboration with other governmental entities is key to advancing complex projects. A great example is the One Vanderbilt concourse, which connects Metro North, Grand Central Madison, and the subway with escalators and elevators to the street. A zoning bonus created by the city in consultation with MTA induced the developer to finance, construct, and maintain this $220 million improvement. In our 15 years using these skills and tools, we have completed transactions that will generate more than $4 billion in revenues and privately financed capital improvements like One Vanderbilt. These transactions will also create more than 4,000 transit-oriented housing units. Zoning and neighborhood planning is a key tool to advance TOD. MTA was integrated in the city's East Midtown planning process, which created zoning density bonuses for transit improvements. As you heard, our new commissioner, Dan Gorodnick, has co-chaired the task force that created this zoning, and I look forward to continuing to work with Mr. Gorodnick as we better connect our transit system with land use. Our former headquarters site on Madison Avenue, which is shown on the left, includes a new entrance to Grand Central Madison. That bonus for that improvement created more floor area, which in turn will generate more ground rent. MTA is coordinating with our expansion projects with land use. MTA worked with city planning to map special zones around 2nd Avenue subway stations in East Harlem, where flexible zoning rules encourage housing. TOD worked with the MTA C&D project team to incorporate retail and housing in the entrance designs. TOD developed a plan for Penn Station access, Morris Park Station. It showed that access to a regional talent pool strengthens the Montefiore Medical Center, justifying a high-density district. Following this early work, the city recently proposed an upzoning and public realm improvements, which will transform the station area. We also negotiated station access improvements to be funded by the development to the east after demonstrating to them that Penn Access strengthens their office demand. Zoning for accessibility, which was introduced in 2021, requires new development within 50 feet of an MTA station to coordinate with MTA access improvements. This zoning tool complements MTA's commitment to make the system accessible by providing space for future elevators in new buildings and neighborhoods where sidewalk space is limited, and also induces privately constructed accessibility improvements. Shown here is the Queensboro Plaza Station, where a developer-financed elevator is under construction. This will complement other ADA improvements that MTA is currently providing. In addition to zoning opportunities, we look for value in MTA property. Unencumbered land is rare. Typically, MTA properties are in active transit use. If feasible, we will relocate MTA facilities, but more typically, we sell development rights. When an adjacent owner is ready to develop, TOD must respond quickly. The developer of the Clock Tower on Northern Boulevard in Queens approached us to buy development rights from the adjacent East Side Access construction site. We had just 6 months to negotiate a complex transaction, creating lot subdivisions, protecting MTA construction, conforming with environmental review, and setting a market price in conformance with public authorities law. The new building on private property generated $56 million for MTA. The Day Street Head House in Lower Manhattan provided development rights and a light and air easement for an adjacent owner, which generated $17 million for MTA and added housing units to this transit-rich location. At Key Street on the Brooklyn waterfront, we are unlocking residential value by relocating a New York City transit facility. The developer is required to secure a relocation site and construct a replacement facility. This complicated transaction will lead to new housing and publicly accessible open space. Community engagement will begin in the near future. The leadership of many suburban communities provides TOD models for the region. Housing near the Mineola Long Island Railroad Station allows downsizing residents to stay in their community and attracts new residents drawn by employment at the nearby medical center. The town of Babylon created a new village near Wyandanch Station, transforming a neglected area into a TOD model. MTA worked closely with the town in its planning, and it swapped property and constructed a commuter garage which freed up land for housing. The resurgence of the city of New Rochelle in Westchester County is another model. Strengthened Main Street retail, tax revenue, and improved public safety all followed from the proactive housing policies of local leaders. Despite strong market demand for housing near transit in the suburbs, many opportunities have not been realized. Suburbs have special challenges, including obsolete zoning, lack of infrastructure, and complex property ownership. Many of the hundreds of jurisdictions in MTA's operating territory have zoning codes which do not allow multifamily housing. Changing zoning requires resources for planning, but especially requires leadership to overcome the natural tendency against change. Many communities also lack utilities and sidewalks to support new housing. Building housing on land used for commuter parking requires constructing a garage, which generally exceeds the ability of new development to finance. Good TOD planning and design goes well beyond housing, with an emphasis on transit customer needs. The recently opened Harrison Station development is a good example of this. The buildings fit the local character, and design focuses on transit needs. This well-planned station area provides pedestrian safety, comfort, and convenience. It includes direct sight lines to the station, good lighting, and amenities like seating and retail. Station drop-offs, bike storage, and commuter parking also needs to be considered. Housing development alone, however, without thoughtful planning of pedestrian and public realm considerations is not successful TOD. Governor Hochul highlighted the critical need for housing in our region. We are pleased to be challenged by the Governor's Executive Order 30, which requires that state agencies find property for housing. Our New York City properties are well understood, but in the suburbs, we had previously only focused on a relatively small set of MTA-owned suburban parking lots. However, with the potential for state support, we have undertaken a review of all suburban sites, including those that we lease but don't own, and sites which can be developed only if combined with adjacent parcels. A substantial portion of property such as shops, rights-of-way, and unusually configured sites are not developable, but there are many promising sites identified where we will undertake planning studies in consultation with local leaders to determine what it will take to develop these sites. As Jamie mentioned, this year's budget includes a major new tool for addressing infrastructure challenges, a $500 million fund to help create new infrastructure to unlock housing. Thanks to Governor Hochul's leadership, this fund will be critical to filling the gap to make high-quality TOD viable at more locations throughout the state, including MTA sites. We'll be working closely with municipal leaders to take advantage of the opportunity this creates. For example, at Beacon, there is great interest in development on a portion of the parking lot at that Metro North station. However, a previous RFP failed as the cost of constructing replacement parking was too high for the development to bear. With this fund in place, we will be issuing a new RFP this year, facilitating badly needed housing that the local community supports and helping grow our ridership at the same time. This is the sort of solution to the housing crisis the governor has tasked us with, and we're thrilled to have this new tool to achieve it. Here are 3 other examples. The village of Hempstead has designated developers to pursue housing on many sites. We'll work with the village to focus on the 2 commuter lots adjacent to the Long Island Railroad station to develop a plan for a garage configured to accommodate commuter needs while maximizing housing on the remainder of the sites. The plan will also ensure safe pedestrian crossings and vehicular movements. Here, MTA does not own the lots, but simply has operating agreements. We'll be working with Westchester County, which owns a lot adjacent to the Metro North lot at the Mount Vernon East Station, to prepare a development plan for the combined sites. This will increase housing beyond what MTA could accomplish on its property alone. And in the town of Lewisboro, a state DOT-owned lot leased to MTA is a prime opportunity. State DOT has no development powers or expertise in that matter, so MTA will take the lead, working with the town to create a housing plan. The plan will propose commuter parking garage alternatives, pedestrian improvements to access the station and nearby shopping, and utility needs. The infrastructure fund will be critical here to support new housing. Many other TOD activities are moving forward that you'll be hearing about in 2024. Construction of the Grand Central Madison at Madison Avenue and 45th Street will start this summer. We'll issue requests for proposals for suburban TOD this year, including Beacon and Westbury, and in the city for our site on Northern Boulevard in Queens. We'll be bringing to the board transactions to support Morris Park TOD, and our web-based First Last Mile toolkit for localities will be updated, and a suburban secure bike parking pilot project at Long Island Railroad and Metro North sites will be launched. Further in the future, MTA's potential investment in the IBX service connecting Brooklyn and Queens presents a major opportunity for new housing and strengthened employment centers. We will expansively explore such opportunities with New York City. We will also study joint development and pedestrian access to new stations. And that concludes my update.
Anybody questions? Mr. Mack.
I think this is a boom. We spent 4 generations in development, and this is the most exciting thing I've seen. And I guess, I don't know, I guess I'm here 30, 35 years to go forward like this. A boom. Also, it'll help congestion.
Dick.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my enthusiasm for all of this. Obviously, we all have worked closely together on a number of these projects, starting with East Midtown and even presently in Morris Park and other areas. So finding ways for the city and MTA to collaborate on the creation of housing and public realm improvements and neighborhood planning and good design is something that is very exciting to me too, obviously, and just wanted to say looking forward to working with you in this new capacity. Thank you.
Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you, sir. I've always been impressed by this topic, and it obviously works well in urban settings. It works well in suburban settings. Putnam County I represent is more rural in characteristic, and we have a number of stations that have an opportunity potentially. The Patterson Station is a really moribund downtown, would be incredible place for people to have either weekend homes or even denser areas to spend the full time there. The Garrison Station, not the Harrison Station, the Garrison Station, where I commute out of, has a really interesting opportunity. And so as we think about this program, I know in years past we've reached out to local officials in my county, but I urge us to think about how we help even the more rural environments, because they have their own unique settings. For example, in the Garrison Station, we don't have town water. Everything is on a septic system, so we have challenges in a well water. So there's more challenges in the environment, but I do think over time it's a really interesting attraction to make the entire region focused on transit-oriented development. So thanks for what you're doing, and if we can talk offline, I'd love to expand what we can do in our little area.
I agree. I just want to add that the market has strengthened in some of these outlying areas over the past several years, as we're seeing in Beacon. So I think the opportunity is really here now. So I agree with that.
Mr. Chu.
I agree. I'll echo boom. I think this is a boom too. You know, I want to see. I'm eager to see some of the findings from the first last mile. I know Jamie and I have talked about it before, and Jessica Matthew. I've had some exchanges. Bike share. So I know everyone's obviously aware here in the city. The city bike, and it's used and it's well deployed. Nassau and Suffolk counties. It was a big deal for our green building advocacy community to get ahead of the infinite number of municipalities on Long Island and actually get universal procurements between the counties for bike share. So I would love to see an opportunity, but it's used intermittently and it's certainly not widely adopted. So I'd love to see opportunities for us as we're doing transit development outside of New York City to help promote that and promote it in a way that you have interoperable systems that are compatible with one another, just like here in the city bike is, just to enhance that that first last mile options and maybe even help us. It's great that we're thinking about parking, but of course I think the goal ultimately is to need as little parking as possible as we move forward.
Thank you. Ms. Lopez and then Mr. Brinkman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you for your presentation. At first, I was getting a little worried because it was so city-centric, and then you started talking about the counties, and I was happy that you mentioned the different projects. I want to triple Sammy's boom to 3 because the Westchester County benefits from 3 different rail lines, and what we're seeing is large new housing developments within half a mile of different Metro North stations. So this is an extremely important topic. And I also appreciate the communication that we're having with your planning staff. Westchester County is now meeting with them on a monthly, quarterly, bi-monthly basis. So I think that communication is key to moving forward with different variety of topics related to TOD. So thank you so much.
Mr. Brinkman.
Just wanted to quickly pile on the boom. No, seriously, seeing how it's revitalized Ronkonkoma. I mean, it's almost like they built a new little city right there. And I know Wyandanch also, tremendous revitalization. So I think this is great, and I support everything that you're doing with this.
Mr. Herbst.
Boom, boom, boom. I think this is an excellent avenue and the right direction to go. We have seen transit-oriented development, particularly in the suburbs. Long Island, some of the locations have already been mentioned. And we've had many conversations just recently about how the tourism in the area and the entertainment, where people are literally getting on the railroad system to go to, say, Rockville Center and to another place to go to the restaurants, dining, and things like that. And that's because of the accessibility and to live close, and it's something that we see the movement is going in that direction. And the vibrant downtowns are really being an attractive place for people to live. One of the big concerns that we keep hearing, though, is the parking facilities that are in the areas. And over time, there's been conflict between the municipalities and the MTA trying to offer, and I think we have to have more of a partnership moving forward. I think you've made a good effort in that direction, but to see this to continue, I support those efforts, and I thank you for what you're doing.
Just respond to that, just to make sure we're emphasizing that to all the board members from Long Island and Westchester and elsewhere, that the governor has ordered us, through the executive order Bob talked about, to go through and identify wherever we have land holdings or other assets that may help us to unlock transit-oriented development around suburban rail stations. So we've done that. And then the budget includes, Board Member Herbst, the exactly for that problem, $500 million that can help to replace commuter parking, to unlock some of that potential. And I will say, since it's been mentioned, if there are developers, local elected officials, or planning officials that see an opportunity that we haven't identified because we've been focused on what Bob rightly says, a limited amount of MTA-owned sites, but if there are other opportunities where we can combine resources in some way to get transit-oriented development done around suburban stations, we're very interested in having that conversation.
Okay, seeing no other hands, I will declare that this topic is booming, and bring the discussion and super important, super interesting, and super topical. Connecting, we all know that transit and housing are connected, but it's so the connection is so clearly apparent in the work that you and the TOD team are doing, Bob. So thank you, and we'll keep us posted. Keep this board posted as all of these projects unfold. With that, if there are no other comments or questions, we're going to move to our regular board business. The minutes of the March board meeting and the minutes from each committee have been distributed to all of the board members. Are there any corrections or omissions? Let the games begin. Mr. Albert.
Yes, there are 3 corrections on page 5 under public speakers. It should say Jason Anthony, not James Anthony. And on page 8, Rich Davies' name is obviously D-A-V-E-Y, not D-A-V-Y. And the last line says, and provided some of the principles that guided the TMRB. That should be the LES principles, not the ALS principles.
All right. All right, that's Andrew Albert bingo right there. Thank you. If there are no further corrections, the minutes are approved as distributed and corrected. Thank you, Mr. Albert. Ms. Barbas, you were chairing the Bridges and Tunnels Committee. Would you report on that?
Okay, all right, Chair Lieber. The Bridges and Tunnels Committee met Monday and reports the following. There are 3 competitive procurements for a total of $25 million. The committee considered these items, however, quorum was not present today. The committee seeks board approval of these items.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve. May I have a second? Mr. Mack, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition or abstention? The items are approved.
This concludes the BNT committee report.
Thank you. Board Member Lopez for Railroad Committee, please.
Chair, the Joint Railroad Committee met Monday and reports the following. There is 1 competitive action for a proposed expenditure of $41.3 million. The committee recommends this item, and I move it.
Second, Mr. Fleischer. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The item carries.
This concludes the Joint Railroad Committee report.
Board Member Joshi, who chaired Transit, is absent. Who else was present at Transit who can report on that? Well, Ms. Mihalcis, would you report on it?
Sure, Mr. Lieber. The New York City Transit Committee met Monday and reports the following. There were 2 ratifications for a total expenditure of $141.5 million. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Mr. Jones, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items are approved.
This concludes the New York City Transit Committee report.
Capital Committee. Who is present at the Capital Committee? Ms. Barbas, would you report for the Capital Committee?
The Capital Program Committee met on Monday and reports the following. Construction and Development has 4 ratification items for a total of $245.9 million. The committee considered these items, however, quorum was not present for the vote. Today, the committee seeks board approval.
Okay, I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second? Ms. Soren, Mr. Herbst, did you have a question about one of these issues? No. Okay. Any questions or comments on any of them? All right, there's a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items are approved.
This concludes the Capital Program Committee report.
And now to Mr. Zuckerman for Finance.
Thank you, sir. And thank you to Sammy for your help on Monday, yesterday. There are 2 action items this month, and the first action seeks board authorization to file for and accept federal grants for fiscal year 2024. The second item seeks approval to launch the temporary fare pilot promotion pertaining to travel on MTA railroads within New York City. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second.
I think we had, because we had, I know some folks had reached out to some of the board members, some stakeholders and elected officials about the discounted ticket.
Yeah.
And we were able to clarify, so I think it's worthwhile to put on the record, that's coming from that specific out-of-borough fund that facilitates that discount, and that's why it's not available for stations outside of that district. And also, within the context of that conversation, I thought it was a good reminder that monthly tickets on the railroad were discounted during COVID. So even after the last fare increase, those fares were still lower than they were, pre-COVID. So just wanted to get that clarification on the record.
Thank you for making that point. It sometimes gets lost in the sauce that we are now lower on monthly tickets on both railroads than we were before COVID. And just more generally, I just remind all of us that our ticket prices, our fares have gone up roughly 4% since 2016, while the CPI has been up north of 30%. So we are, for all of us, affordability is a huge issue, and I think we're staying the course on that.
And there's not, and I guess I should add that this is not of no benefit to those who are, again, this is a measure that's largely in response to facilitating congestion pricing and its effectiveness, and the behavioral modification for people not coming into the district. So even those that find themselves, particularly constrained, it still provides an option if you do find yourself, driving into that, which is not preferable. It's better to commute, obviously, door to door, but it's a necessary thing to do to help make congestion pricing effective.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Seeing no other comments and questions, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? The items carry.
We did not.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
we did not have any procurements this month, but we did real estate items. There are two transactional real estate items this month. The first is a license extension for MTA Metro North, and the second is a letter of agreement for MTA. The committee recommends these items, and I move them.
Second, Ms. Mahaltzis, all in favor? Any opposition or abstention? Thank you. The real estate items are approved.
And that concludes the Finance Committee report. Thank you.
Okay. And, well, thank you. That concludes today's board business. May I have the much-loved motion to adjourn? Ms. Soren, seconded by Dr. Rizzo. We are in adjournment. Thank you. All right. Well, it is Christopher Grice's birthday, so we'll cheer for you. Lot to talk about today. I want to start with acknowledging the incredible progress that's been made on safety. We started out this year with a challenging January, but the mayor and the NYPD, with the governor's support, put a lot more forces in, and we're seeing the results. Last week, 33% reduction in crime relative to 2023. Year to date, remember we were up in January, but year to date now, we are down 6.5%. And importantly, we're close to 11% under pre-COVID, pre-pandemic subway crime stats. So things are headed in the right direction. I just want to acknowledge the NYPD and the mayor and the governor, who have each done a ton of work to get us to this point. Our priority for riders, and I'll probably bore the press to death, but I keep saying this, is service and safety. Service and safety. And service is great. Subway service is fantastic. Commuter railroad service is out of sight. And safety is really headed in the right direction. So those are our priorities. Tim.
And we start today with Anna Lay of the New York Times. Anna.
Hi. Okay. Hey, Dano. I'm curious about this new gun detection technology that's going into the subway. I'm wondering if you have any strong feelings about it one way or the other, and if you have any feelings about Evolve Technology, the company that Mayor Adams has talked about wanting to partner with on that endeavor.
I don't hold out myself as an expert. This is going to be a test that's performed by the NYPD. I know that Evolve, that particular company's technology has been used in a lot of different places with some benefits, but we're going to be working with the NYPD as they test it out. I love the mayor's passion for using technology to try to improve safety. In some cases, it can make a huge difference. We've seen real benefits, for example, from use of drones to spot subway surfers. Before, we have cops in stations and along the lines where there has been historically some kids who have been doing subway surfing. But the NYPD more recently has been using drones to try to get an early warning of that activity going on. We love that. Other things, not as high impact, no secret. So we're going to work closely with the NYPD to do this. We have done some of these tests on our own as well, principally in Grand Central and a couple of different locations with the federal government support. But this pilot is really going to be run by the NYPD, and we're going to support them. In addition to the effectiveness of the technology, we're going to be very focused on the placement of these devices, how does it work from a circulation standpoint, making sure that people can, if they need to, run for the train and get in and out of the station cleanly and easily. And we're going to work with the NYPD to see how it goes.
Over to Samantha Liebman from New York One. Sam.
Hi. So I have two questions. One is currently drivers who have an Easy Pass not issued by the MTA do not get a discount on the MTA bridges and tunnels. So will they still get the discount from the congestion pricing gantries?
So I think you mean it's New York State, the New York State Easy Passes.
Right. If you have a Port Authority Easy Pass or a New Jersey Turnpike Easy Pass, you don't get a discount on the MTA bridges and tunnels.
Is Allison here? Can we get back to you on that?
You get it on the congestion pricing charge.
You do?
Not on the bridges, but
You will get it on the congestion pricing charge. I am informed.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My second question is, we talked about mitigation for New Jersey, but is there also going to be mitigation money for Staten Island?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have to give the feds the feds who have supervised this whole environmental review process an opportunity to look over what we submitted. So I don't want to get into all the particulars, but every single census tract which was identified as having a disproportionate impact, is the term of art that's used, increase in truck traffic in an area that already had pre-existing burdens, health and otherwise, does receive an allocation of the mitigation. So I'm not going to talk specifics. I did address the fact that New Jersey, which had claimed again and again in the legal setting that they were never going to receive any, was being allocated as part of our systematic analysis of the final tolling strategy, final tolling structure. They were being allocated, but every community that has census tracts that are identified through the analysis that we've done will get an allocation.
All right, we go to the balcony where Gregory Mocker is standing by from PIX 11. Greg, if you stand up, we can see you better from back there.
Thank you, sir. Could you address the discount that was approved today, and could there be others?
Well, you know, one thing that it needs to be clear is this was a decision by the state legislature using a pre-existing program called the Outer Borough Transportation Account, which is, by the way, funded by surcharges on taxis and FHVs. There was money that was specifically designated to help transit in the outer boroughs. So that's where this came from. I have to defer to the state legislature. They made that decision to put that on. But I would say this, there have been huge discounts since the onset of COVID. We've had this, we have had the Omni system now gives discounts for weeklies automatically. Our monthlies on Long Island and in Westchester are actually cheaper than they were before COVID, cheaper than they were before the pandemic. So we have emphasized affordability in the commuter rail system pretty successfully. I just remind all of us that MTA fares since 2016 have gone up like the base fare like 4%, when the CPI has gone up over 30%. So affordability is a big priority of ours, and we're getting there, along with reliability. Commuter rails are at 97.5% on average, and we are providing on Long Island Railroad 40% more service, a brand new terminal, and we're doing it all while having lower fares for a big portion of our customers. So we think we're really hitting the mark on affordability.
All right, let's move on to Alfonso Castillo of Newsday. May want to ask you about that 40% extra service, sir. Alfonso.
Similar question. So I heard the back and forth with Sammy Chu. As you can imagine, I heard from some Long Islanders saying, why aren't we getting this? Understanding that this is specifically from a pool of funding that is for the city. But if in principle, the idea is if we want people to get out of their cars and take the train, let's give them incentive to do that. Should that be extended outside of New York City?
Listen, again, Alfonso, you know this, so I'm going to hold you to it, that we cut the cost of transit coming out of COVID, particularly for Long Island Railroad, while providing a lot more service. So, as I said, we're really confident that we've done a lot on the affordability front. I'm not going to recite the numbers for you. Obviously, up to other decision makers whether there were additional discounts provided, but just make sure your readers understand that basically what happened, what the legislature did, was to bring the monthly for within city travel more or less in alignment with the city ticket program, which had already been put into effect. So there wasn't it was mostly just making sure it all lined up, and I think that it has a great benefit for being an attraction for some folks who, instead of having to buy a new city ticket every day, now can buy a monthly if they're regular commuters, and that's great. But that is the principal thing that it did, is it brought a benefit that already existed into some alignment with a daily ticket discount that had already been provided.
A second question on congestion pricing. I think you've heard Congressman Gottheimer question your math about the $1 billion. I know they think it's, by their math, closer to $3 billion. Can you talk about the confidence level in that projection that congestion pricing is going to be bringing around $1 billion a year?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we're doing modeling that is based. We're utilizing models that are kind of dictated by the federal government and is the standard model that is used by, not to get technical, but this is the NIMTIC, the regional model for for planning of air quality and traffic that's used by all the agencies in the area. So we use that model, and taking into account all the discounts and exemptions that take place, and the overnight discount and the low-income discount, and all the other realities of emergency vehicles that won't pay and so on. That's why we think it's $1 billion. I'm pretty sure that other folks who have claimed it's much more haven't really done the math in alignment with the reality of the tolling structure that we've proposed. They just appear to have taken, the total volume of traffic and multiplied it by $15 or something like that without taking account of all the vehicles that won't pay. But honestly, Gottheimer can continue to conduct, these stunts. Obviously, this is not a guy who's done a lot for transit. He has sitting in his district a major rail line that was called the Hudson-Bergen line that now we here refer to as the Hudson-Hudson line. It never went to his district because he's never lifted a finger to do anything for transit. He continues to come to Lower Manhattan. He can keep coming to Lower Manhattan in his chauffeur-driven car with the special license plate that appears to exempt him from normal traffic laws and tickets that might be assigned. He can keep coming. And I'm not going to have to engage in stunts with politicians who want to do that. What we're focused on is making sure that people get the benefits of congestion pricing. Do not overlook the fact that for the region, every pollutant is projected to be reduced by congestion pricing. So if you're interested in air quality, if you're interested in eliminating traffic violence, if you're interested in safer streets, cleaner air, congestion pricing is where it's at.
Thank you.
And we move to Dave Colon, Streets Blog, less than 7 hours away from, could be the end of round one, right, Dave? Good afternoon.
David, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the Gottheimer illegally parked. I know that's a big issue.
We
for
were
you,
on that.
Yeah, okay.
We were all over that. We were the ones who revealed his ticket. That's the Streets Blog promise. We will always find
Go Knicks.
speeding tickets from
Okay.
politicians. Go Knicks, go Rangers. Jano, I wanted to get a little bit into bus fare evasion, an old comment of yours, and the fact that so far this year, bus passenger revenue is down $29 million from what the MTA has been had expected from it. Buses is really the only place where paid ridership is where it's just completely off of these McKinsey projections that came out. Everything else is kind of in that midpoint. Now, I think part of the issue here is bus fare enforcement is much more difficult to do than subway fare enforcement. You can't just put a cop at the start of at a bus store the way that you put them at fare gates on the subway. Now, last year,
Is there a question here?
I'm getting there.
Okay, good.
I'm
good.
getting there.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
So last year at a CBC breakfast, you said the quicker we can get the Omni system in place, I believe that we're going to have more ability to do European-style checking, where you can connect somebody out on a bus and check everybody for proof of payment. Omni is still not really close to getting there. It's not used much more than 30% on buses, hasn't been used on fares yet, hasn't been integrated there. If fare evasion is this much of a priority for the MTA, why isn't heaven and earth being moved to ensure that things like fares are integrated, make sure that it's used more on buses?
I'm known for saying it, but I'll say it again. It's a fair point. The Omni system, one of the big milestones that we're pushing towards is some of this, not the base fare, but the specialty fares. It's getting kids who ride buses disproportionately to school onto Omni and off of the wacky system of many different types of Metro cards, which are not always distributed perfectly at the schools. It's getting reduced fare customers onto Omni. It's getting the medical the benefits providers to accept Omni and to stop sending people monthly Metro cards. That work is huge priority for us, and I believe that when we get there, that the usage of Omni on buses is going to significantly increase. You're not wrong about fare evasion. It is bus fare evasion is a real challenge that we are struggling with, right now I really don't have a response to your characterization. We are down. It is a significant threat to the economics of the MTA, but we have moved forward with the Eagle teams. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about trying to build more of a relationship between bus drivers and riders. This is something that Rich has thought a lot about, both to protect our bus drivers, but also to build the sense of community that needs to prevail in an environment which is basically voluntary, where there is not a cop standing there saying, you got to do it. And we're going to take advantage of the cameras to protect our riders, because we know that fare evaders and people who do things criminally or disruptive tend to go hand in hand. So bus fare evasion and the whole bus system fare payment approach is definitely a priority, and we have to make some milestones on that. Rich, do you want to step up on that?
And if one of you can just tell me about Omni and Fair Fares, the timeline on that.
I mean, like I think as Jano said, there's no silver bullet, right? And you've outlined the challenges particular for bus. We also weren't collecting bus fares for 9 months during COVID. I think that's another unique issue that we, are grappling with bus. But, as Jano said, and you asked, we're looking at rolling out Omni more quickly. Students will be able to, we expect to use Omni come this fall, for example. I think one thing of the data we see is that actually fare evasion is its highest right after school gets out, around 3 o'clock. And so I think one of our hypotheses is actually fares aren't being evaded, students aren't swiping. And so getting students to swipe and use their Metro cards now and in the future, Omni is going to be critically important. We're not going to enforce our way out of it. We need to be thinking about equity, and so we expect hopefully later this year that Omni can be used for some of those products. We're testing it right now for our paratransit customers. We have about 100 right now. And then as we announced just this past week, our customer service centers, now folks can get their a permanent reduced fare Metro card. In the future, folks should be able to use those customer service centers to avail themselves of Omni as well. One more point, I think one thing we did notice back in December is that we saw a little bit of a higher than we would have liked to see outages on our buses with the Omni machines, and the team working with Omni has improved Cubic's uptime as well. So it's not one issue, it's a multitude of issues that we're tackling, and it's going to take us time, no doubt.
Fair Fares?
All right, let's...
Fair Fares and Omni, is there any update on the
I'll
timeline
get
for
you an
that?
update. No, I don't have an update on that, but we continue to progress, as I said, for Omni across a number of our fare channels, but I don't have an answer for you. I'll get it for you, though.
All right, let's move on to Rye Rivard right next door there from Politico. Rye.
Yeah, given your relationship with Congressman Gottheimer and the sort of suburban-driven lawsuits, and the way that the budget fix got done last year, where it went from a whole state thing to a more local fix, is there any end to sort of the tension between the MTA and the outer boroughs and the suburbs, including the New Jersey suburbs, or is this just what happens here?
I'm not sure I agree. Like 80% of folks in New Jersey who come to the CBD take mass transit. They're looking for New Jersey to invest and improve mass transit the same way that folks, the 80+% of Long Islanders are looking for high quality service from the commuter railroads in New York. So I think there's much more alignment. And we heard today about transit-oriented development. In many ways, the differences between the city and the suburbs are starting to diminish as we recognize the challenges of housing at the regional level. And that more and more folks who live in the suburbs want the benefits of urban type or more dense living close to transit. Maybe they only own one car instead of having to own 2+ cars. So I don't think that there's tension between cities and suburbs. And reminder, the vast majority of New Jersey Transit commuters actually go on to be MTA riders. So we're very much in alignment. I recently got a letter from an organization that the New Jersey Rail Passengers Organization, saying in no uncertain terms that they agreed with us, and we'll share the letter with you. They agreed with the New York State on congestion pricing and objected strongly to the way that New Jersey had underfunded transit and let it deteriorate. So I think that we're in alignment with most people in the suburbs, although the politicians seem to speak to very old school models of, the suburbanites hate the city and they don't like mass transit commuting. The numbers just don't bear that out.
And we welcome back to the MTA headquarters Jose Martinez of the city. Jose, welcome.
Thanks, Tim. Hi, Jano. I was hoping I could get some response from you, Jano, on the female bus operators who spoke today in the public speaking session about the lawsuit they filed and what they contend is a lack of reasonable accommodations for pregnant bus operators in an agency that is increasingly female, and a policy that they say is forcing them to step out and use up time off and other forms of compensation at a time when they could be contributing.
Well, it's no secret to you, like most of you have been part of this MTA family for some years now, and I'm super proud of how many women we have in leadership in my time at the MTA. One of them is General Counsel Paige Graves, who will come and talk about this issue, but I'm also going to mention Chief of Staff Laura Wiles, Chief Administrative Officer Lizette Camillo, Chief Customer Officer Shanifa Riera, and on and on and on, Jessica Matthew, so many, Anita Miller, who runs labor relations. We have a very strong female cohort, some very, very strong female cohort in our leadership team. But I'm going to ask Paige, who's managing this litigation, to talk about the specifics.
So my comments are going to be limited because it is in litigation. So our last contract dramatically expanded the family medical leave. Birth mothers got more paid leave. They went from 12 weeks of paid leave, 2 weeks of paid leave to 12 weeks of paid leave. This issue of accommodation was assigned to a joint labor and management task force to address these issues and discuss how things can be improved. However, it went into litigation, and I believe that the lawyers who brought the lawsuit actually was here at our board meeting in the back. And because it's now in litigation, my comments are going to be limited, and we'll just sort of hash it out in court.
All right, let's go back to the balcony where Michelle Kasky is there from Bloomberg News. Michelle, if you just stand up, we can see you a little bit better. Thank you.
Hi, Jano. Can you tell us at all what's the latest that you're hearing from USDOT regarding the environmental assessment? I mean, last we heard from you, if I remember correctly, you were saying that MTA has submitted everything to them. And it's now in their hands. Have you heard anything more in terms of any more information that they want or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, Michelle, you've been around through much of this process. There's a lot of back and forth. So we submitted all the analytics and all the materials for the so-called reevaluation. This is the federal environmental review process that once you have a FONSI, a finding of no significant impact, that is based on a range of scenarios, which is what we did, then they reevaluate you in light of what your final selected scenario is. So they are going through the materials. There is back and forth with questions and answers, but I don't have a specific projection for you on when that will be concluded. That's really in USDOT's hands, the Federal Highway Administration.
All right, and nearby we got Ben Brockfeld from AM New York.
But I would say this, we're hoping and expecting that it would be concluded in time for the June 30th projected start to take place.
Hey, Jano. I have two questions. First, I wanted to ask about the railroad discounts that got approved. So, advocates, PCAC in the room here, they were calling for, a discount like this to also include free transfer to the subway or bus. Obviously, I know that the OBTA is not directly controlled by the MTA, but I assume that you have some sway in. I would assume that there's a little bit of you would have input in where this money is going to, right? So like why isn't free transfer?
So I think the framing of the question is you recognize the OBTA is controlled by the state legislature, but actually the MTA controls it, right? That's the premise of your question. I reject the premise of the question. So those negotiations, it's not a secret that There were a lot of different transportation issues that were discussed as part of the budget. They came towards the end. I see Lisa Daglian leads the PCAC there, so she's very aware. And they were resolved at the table between the legislature and the executive. And everybody, we all love, we all prioritize affordability. And this is good news. As I said, it brings the monthly ticket holder, the cost of monthly ticket holder more into alignment with the city ticket pricing. So I think it made a lot of sense. We have 70,000 customers now, Lisa, who I believe are availing themselves of monthly tickets within the city. So it makes a lot of sense not to make them buy a new city ticket every day. That's a real benefit, and it helps, frankly, think about it, when people are getting on in the city Long Island Railroad stations or the city Metro North stations, it's a short ride till they get to the terminal, whether it's Grand Central or Penn Station, right? And so you want it to be easy to collect those fares. Having a monthly where somebody is just flashing a pass rather than having to go through an elaborate ticket payment process for an individual ticket is a benefit to ticket collection. So it also is an efficiency benefit to everybody, just ease of collection on a short ride, as well as being a discount for those folks. But the decision was made at the table in the budget, not by the MTA.
And I just wanted to ask about the free bus program, which did not get additional money in the budget to be extended. There's no data has been put out on this yet officially by the MTA. I mean, I know Rich Davey gave a quote to a paper a few months ago saying that ridership had been up on those lines. But would you say that this program, if you're not going to be extending it, would you say it's been a failure?
No, I think what we have said, and I will keep saying it, hopefully it'll get through, is we are passionate about affordability but we need to prioritize it for people who need affordability. I don't need a discount. People who are at the upper end or middle end of the economic spectrum don't need a discount. Affordability, transit is 15% the cost of owning an automobile. It is the essence of affordability. It's one of the few things that makes New York affordable. That transit is great from an affordability standpoint. We want to invest more in fair fares and other benefits for people who need the help. We don't want to make it free for bankers and high-end people who can contribute to this great system, because we need the system to be there for everybody, especially the people who are most dependent on it. And that's our approach to affordability. We're going to stick with it.
All right, we move on to Steve Nesson of WNYC, Gothamist. He's the czar of the On the Way newsletter, widely read across America on Thursdays. Steve.
Hi, Chair. If you'll forgive me, 3 questions that are fun, 2 on congestion pricing. Quick question about the flex.
That will be a first, the fun congestion pricing question. Here we go. Drum roll.
Trying to sell it. How flexible will that $5 discount be, especially for the toll discount for entering in the 4 tunnels? The $5 rebate.
Credit,
Credit, excuse me. When the Port Authority raises the cost of tolls, will that $5 also increase commensurate to that?
Right now, we have no plans for increasing or decreasing. The toll structure is the toll structure for the foreseeable future. So there's really there hasn't been specific thought given to any adjustments at the future. What we are going to do is to see how, consistent with our statutory obligations and otherwise, we're going to do a ton of data collection. It's going to be available on open data, and you guys will pick at it, and we will all discuss what we are learning from how congestion pricing works when it's implemented, as opposed to all the modeling and projections.
And on the education campaign around congestion pricing, I looked through it, very excited to do so, but I didn't see any info there about a few specific things, like the FDR Drive South, if you're coming off the Brooklyn Bridge, would be tolled, for example, whereas if you go on up north, it won't be tolled. The Queensboro upper level north would not be tolled. But I'm just saying it because people ask me this all the time when I'm on the radio and in emails. Does that undercut the MTA's credibility for the program to not be more specific about these details?
So credit to you that there are some aspects of this that are a little bit confusing. What the result of is the legislation was very explicit that the toll starts at 60th Street. So we had to study it in compliance with the legislation. There are some issues that I think seem a little bit of head scratchers sometimes. We're going to study them as the implementation unfolds. But we were just trying to make sure we were in exact compliance with the legislation. Steve, you can understand in a very litigious environment, we had to play by the letter of the law, and that said 60th Street was the barrier.
Were those the fun questions?
And the most fun question, following up on Hellgate's interesting reporting about NYPD officers driving MTA buses. From your perspective, how safe is that to have untrained people driving MTA buses?
I'm definitely inviting Rich to comment on your most fun of all questions.
Well, it's a rare occasion, thankfully. I mean, the police, have said that they're fully qualified and able to do that, but it is a very rare occasion. So, but we're there to support NYPD if they require a bus. But I think this might be one of the first times in my tenure here that's occurred.
Would you allow them to do it again?
That's a fourth question.
All right, the math works. Anything else on the math?
Steve, I was reminded by Juliet, the information that you're asking for about what things are told and what aren't is on the website. So we got to, and if there's any disagreement, talk to Juliet, but I just don't want to concede that there's something that's left unclear.
Thank
Okay.
you. We go to Evan Simko-Benarski of the New York Daily News, the hometown newspaper. Evan.
Hey, Chairman, how are you? I wanted to ask about, crime is dropping. Violent incidents, there have been a lot fewer, but there's still at least a perception, but there's transit workers have been the brunt of a lot of assaults. When this was a couple of months ago, one of the things that was brought up was cameras in the cabs for conductors and drivers on trains. We've talked about the sort of the cockpitization, for lack of a better word, at buses. I'm wondering if I can get updates on those two programs. Where are you guys at on that?
Yeah, so obviously this has been a huge focus for the chair and for all of us at MTA. I mean, a couple things just in context. I mean, the good news is that worker assaults are actually down this year versus last, I think about 36%. We've also said one is too many, and we've had more than one this year. So on the updates, a couple good news. This past week, the DMV gave us a waiver that we've been waiting for to allow the installation of e-mirrors. By regulation, they were required to provide that waiver, and they're actually going out with rulemaking now to allow, I think, that to occur for other transit systems in New York. Sadly, we're not the only ones that, see worker assaults here in New York and elsewhere. And that'll be an unlock to allow us then to install the cockpit. So that's one. We've been testing, the subways team have been testing some cameras for the conductor positions to make sure that we've got good view, good visibility. I think we've tested 3 or 4 types so far. We haven't made our final decision yet on which specific one we will use. But we continue, as you know, in earnest to put cameras out across the system. I think we're at 27.5% of the entire fleet now has cameras inside subway cars. So, we continue to add those kind of layers of protection, but also we hope deterrence for our employees and our customers. And we'll continue to work with our labor partners as well.
Can you speak a little bit too, because I know that there's been some back and forth between labor and MTA or New York City Transit regarding cameras in driver and conductor positions. Are you guys on the same page now?
I think we're pretty close. I mean, whether we get to the same page or not, or the right book or the right chapter, we're going to roll it out as we said. But I think, I think the TWU leadership's come around to understand that, had those cameras been in place for that awful slashing that occurred in February, we would have had a better chance of catching that perpetrator. So, but we're cooperating with them, and this is a place where management and labor agree. We don't want any assaults of our people, and we'll continue to work with them.
And I would say this, one of the most egregious assaults of a transit worker named Anthony Nelson by a perp named Alexander Wright. That and many of these other assaults, we monitor them really closely to make sure we can show up in court along with the TWU. And the criminal justice system does take notice when we show up. So he has another court date on May 2nd, and we're planning to appear. But that brings me back to, I think, the point that can't be lost, Evan, which is the best defense against transit worker assaults is if our friends in the criminal justice system will actually charge those as felonies. They are on the books. An attack on a transit worker is a felony. There's a little sticker in every subway card these days that it's a up to 7-year penalty. So if the DAs and the other folks in the criminal justice system will treat it as a felony, and also attacks on cops are also in the same category, I think we will get out, because the people who do attacks on transit workers, almost all of them, as I said, have huge rap sheets. And I think I've said this to you a few times, right? 38 people for assaults, 38 assaults on transit workers, 38 people arrested for assaults on transit workers last year had over 1,200 priors among them. So if we start to get serious about people who are really problematic, and there's not that many of them, we'll be protecting our workers.
Are those meetings among the stakeholders,
Yes.
the DAs, MTA, are those continuing?
They're ongoing, and that is one forum where we hope to, with the DAs and other folks' help, to get everyone focused on the 100 to 200 people who seem to be the most chronic transit criminals.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jano, Paige Graves, Rich Davey. Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon from Lower Manhattan.